Mark Martin, the ones that have really run here and know it well, and they have that same kind of respect about it, you know, that you come here, but and you think you know it, but because it's such a tricky track and that handling, as I mentioned, is such an important factor, that the chassis changes, the track conditions changes, so it's a lot of pressure, I think, to get this racetrack where you feel like, hey, I've got this thing handled.
You know, as you watch the cars, they're working through turn one right now. The track looks real smooth. You don't see a lot of movement on the bodies of the car. Well, they're running maybe 65 miles an hour here, and it's like going down the interstate in your passenger car to the drivers. But when they get up to racing speeds, maybe as high as 175, you watch the difference. You'll see these cars bouncing and moving. All these little black stripes on the racetrack are tar marks or where the pavement has cracked, and the car will really bounce around on the drivers. It really upsets the handling and causes a lot of fatigue problems in the suspension. As we look from, I believe that's Dick Trickle's car, looking at Bobby Hill up in front of him.
Hey, two teammates carrying our in-car cameras here. We're coming down, working our way through the final pace lap. They are in the tunnel turn right now, and you see what a gentle kink that is, but we'll talk more about how you get through that during the day with Gary Nelson and Lynn St. James. A very unusual racetrack presenting a very unusual challenge to these drivers here today. And I think the key element, if there's one thing we could point to today, it's sitting right up there at the front of that field, it is the pressure. The pressure that these drivers are feeling as we watch Bobby Hillen getting ready to charge through the pack. And give us a wave. Hi there, Bobby.
I'm glad he took his left arm off the rim there, though. It was sort of looked like he was just cruising. I said, come on, it's the start now. Let's get ready.
This is indeed it, ladies and gentlemen. From Dick Trickle's car, we get a view, and now they come off turn 3. Not turn 4, but turn 3 here at Pocono. You'll see it live for 500 miles, uninterrupted by commercials. The green flag falls, and the Miller High Life 500 is underway. Wide they go, down into turn number 1. The dart and dive to the inside by Bill Elliott. The field comes streaming through. Not the time, Gary, to try to make some dramatic move.
No, not really. This is the most riskiest part of the race, you know, the first lap. And also the drivers, since it's warmer today, don't really know exactly how their cars are going to handle. So they got to do a little bit of sorting out right here in the first few laps. We got to watch Dick Trickle. He may be receiving the black flag for jumping the start. I think I saw him pull out a line, and the rules say you can't pull out a line until you get to the start-finish line on the first start of the race. Let's watch and see if NASCAR does anything.
Working the first of 200 laps with Rusty Wallace, grabbing the early lead from Darrell Waltrip. No surprise there. Darrell told us at the top of the show, I'll let him go. Wallace, less committal about his strategy on the race radio. Mark Martin tucking into that third spot, running fourth. Lake Speed, who qualified there, Sterling Marlin up to 5th. Bill Elliott is 6th. And here come the field working their way back toward turn 1. Beginning of a long grind here today. And the question, I guess, whether or not Rusty Wallace will be able to give Pontiac a victory that's long overdue. Ford and Chevy have long dominated on this racetrack. A big story here all week has been the progress, or to some extent the lack of progress, of Gary's former driver, Jeff Bodine. Jeff really smacked the wall a ton here in practice and was unable to fix the car. He sort of took the left front where the right front belongs. He's already passed a couple of people from 16th to 14th. And Gary, when you've got the fast car, faster than the pole sitter actually, but you're in the back of the pack, what do you do for the first pit stop?
Well, you have to be very careful the first few laps of the race. You know, he wants to sort out his car like everybody, doesn't want to get in any trouble. And hopefully, as we watch him come into the speed shot camera on the front straightaway, hopefully that he can move up through the traffic right along in here. You see how heavy the traffic is. You don't want to take too many risks early, but he wants to get his car sorted out, get up the front, and hopefully start leading.
Rudd came out of line. Bodine followed him, attempting to make the pass. They are racing with Neil Bonnet, and it's a good battle back there in about 14th to 15th spot, running close to 160 miles an hour the second lap at 158. Lynn.
You know who's really moved up is Kenny Schrader. He started 10th, and I think I counted him about 6th or 7th as he came by, so he seems to really be working well today.
Not a surprise, I don't think, to Gary, to see that. Schrader likes this place. The team works well here.
Yeah, you know, Ken Schrader really, this track kind of falls into his driving style. Rusty Wallace also has that same type of deal where, you know, they like to hang the car out a little bit. They like to put the foot to the metal. That's why you see Rusty up here leading. He likes to to run wide open. Schrader likes them to run wide open. Along this front straightaway, you need a lot of horsepower, so you really need to be able to move down the front stretch.
Well, the pack is really split. The first 4 cars seem to have a clean line and be running in clean air up there, and then there's that whole pack with Kenny right at the beginning of that pack. See, now it gets real tight, so it's like already divided into 2.
Schrader is directly at the head of this group. We see Bill Elliott in action there as they have begun to separate a little bit, but they are indeed losing their touch. You see Schrader, he's the guy who was broken loose from that group. There was no black flag, by the way, for Nick Triddle. Let's get that bit of information in for all the folks up in Wisconsin who are chewing their nails and say, come on, don't do that to the white knight, don't do that to our hero. Story here, the leaders up front trying to do the breakaway and make this 4-car race, and Schrader
he is really pulling in there.
Down.
That's right, he's pulling into that first 4 and getting away from the rest of that other pack.
You called that one for sure, Lynn, as Schrader basically just put the hammer down, hung the car out the way Gary Nelson said he would, and has taken it up to a point of contention, and now we see the action further back. That's a great shot. I love the pictures of the front straightaway at Pocono as we watch Wallace lead with Waltrip second, Mark Martin third. The 4th place car is Lake Speed, who has kind of been on the cruise control, just watching the guys up front, but now he must watch his mirror because directly behind him, lurking there and trying to charge up and get a piece of that action, is the 25 car. Here's Mark Martin. It looks like he may have some notions, some designs, if you will, on Darrell Waltrip, the 2nd place man. Great shot of the leader.
You know, watching Rusty go around, as he exits the turn, his car really seems to hook up well. Instead of sort of drifting, he seems to be able to get the traction and get that propelling forward as opposed to the side action. I know that this track, because it's not as banked as much, there's a lot of side bite going on, and Rusty seems to have that handling right now, anyway, under control.
The chassis set up hold together all day, Gary Nelson.
Well, you constantly have to chase the chassis because there's other cars. And look at Jeff Bodine, 4 or 5 wide going down the front stretch there. Boy, he is really sorting things out early. He's gone by Ricky Rudd up alongside of Neil Bonnet. Oh, now he backed off a little, let Neil have the group.
Same issue that Lynn St. James talked about at the top of the show. We saw that picture from a year ago when they actually went 9 lanes wide on a restart. And in that shot at the top of the show, what we saw was Schrader going from 20th spot to 2nd in the field. He passed 18 cars in the length of that straightaway. Bodine got around 1, but it was a tough one, and that was Ricky Rudd. Now, we mentioned that we're going to let you call in and ask us your questions here today. If you have any question that you'd like to ask about Winston Cup stock car racing, we invite you to give us a call. The number is 1-800-RACE-118. That's 1-800-722-3118. We'll repeat that number, obviously, throughout the afternoon. You want to jot it down, but do give us a call. It is toll-free, and we will do our level best to field any legitimate question that comes from anywhere out there in America. You fans who love this sport and recognize it as perhaps the most dramatic in all of motorsports. You give us a call, we'll try to get an answer to your question. Gary Nelson.
Well, we sure want to thank everybody for tuning in today. We're really looking forward to bringing you a very good race. This is one of the best tracks, and with no commercial interruptions, I'm really looking forward to having a good day here, and I'm anxious to really get down to the real racing as we get going here. Look at, you know, Schrader's moving up, Mark Martin and Darrell Waltrip. Darrell Waltrip said he might just take it easy. Well, if he's taking it easy, he's running 2nd, so he's really going to be a threat, I think.
It's an interesting history that this racetrack has in terms of things like yellow flags. They once ran this race with only 2 yellow flags. The commercial breaks, in theory, provide a little bit of a break for the broadcasting team. We won't get that here today. Oh, trouble for Bill Elliott. Bill Elliott has shown a bit of smoke and is coming on pit road. Let's go to Dick Berggren.
And the apparent problem, Dave Despain, is Bill thinks he's got a flat right front. He's not sure. Just a moment ago, Dan Elliott, his brother, asked me, would you please put the camera on our car and see what the right front looks like? Bill thinks it's flat. Well, he's just coming in now. He's going to do at least a 2-tire change. Bernie says just 2. No, they're going to. No, it's just 2. Just 2 in 12.2 seconds. That puts him in the back of the pack.
Major setback there for Bill Elliott, a former winner of the race. In fact, 2-time winner of the race, and the only man ever to win it from the pole.
Boy, that's a tough deal to have to come in and stop on the green. You won't lose a lap here at Pocono changing 2 tires, but one of the things I really worry about when the driver doesn't know which tire it is that's flat, a lot of times it's the left side tire. You know, I've gone years and years doing this. Hopefully it was with the right front like they thought, but if it was the left side, he may have to come back in again.
Yeah, it surprised me that it was right side because I know that I've also been told that there's a lot of stones and rocks in the inside of the tunnel turn, and that's what they're afraid of getting a cut tire on. So it was surprising that it was the right.
Problems for Rick Wilson. Attrition beginning early. Definitely not a scheduled stop as Rick Wilson wheels car number 4 onto pit road, having slowed down at turn 3, and Ernie Irvan is also coasting. So right out of the box, we have troubles for a couple of the big names. Bill Elliott, a former winner of the race, and now for Rick Wilson, who a lot of people feel is going to bulldog his way into victory lane in the not-distant future, and they have gone under the hood, and it looks like that one is going to take a while. Up front, no change in that top quartet. They've pretty much elected to run in formation here today, fighter pilot style, which brings to mind what I thought might have been the quote of the weekend. Pocono has been known over the years for some fog and some rain, and given the fact that a lot of these guys pilot their own airplanes, the joke during Friday qualifying when the fog settled over the racetrack was you couldn't go out unless you had your instrument rating. Here is the top 5. Move Kenny Schrader around Lake Speed into that position as we wish you all a very happy Father's Day with the best show in motorsports, Winston Cup Stock Car Racing, live for 200 laps, uninterrupted by commercials here on Showtime Event Television. It is really a thrill for us to be able to bring you this opportunity, and I think it is probably also a thrill for Rusty Wallace to be able to shrink Darrell Waltrip in his mirrors just a little bit. He's beginning to pull away. Dick Trickle has come on pit road. We have the number 84 car onto pit road. Problems for Dick Trickle, and simultaneously a battle heating up right here. This is now the race for third. Schrader has moved around Mark Martin, and there is no doubt, as you called it right at the top, Lynn, that this guy at number 25 is the man on the move. Kenny Schrader likes this place, feels that they're due. They've had an up and down season that we'll talk about a little bit later. The 84 car of Trickle apparently left some debris in turn 3 that may cause us a problem, but Kenny Schrader had run around the debris and likewise around Mark Martin, and he is now in third place.
Boy, Kenny Schrader is really flying. Look at him right down against the grass here in the first turn, sliding up, not even below that white line. He's almost to the inside of the track. That's got to be the shortest way around, but you're lucky if you've done your job well if your car will stick that close to the inside. Let's watch him as he approaches the tunnel turn. This is turn 2 over the tunnel. Right along in here, there's a curve on the inside of the track. Let's see how close he comes to that. Yeah, right down to the inside again, hardly sliding at all. He's really got that car hooked up.
Schrader pursued by Martin, a couple of the young lions, the emerging stars of stock car racing, guys who are definitely in line to win in a lot of races. Mark Martin still looking for his first one. The race speed average is quick at 153.5 miles an hour here for the first 10 laps of competition. And Gary, I guess the question of pace is very much in the minds of the crew chiefs all the time. How fast can you run and still get to the finish line? That's one of the great guessing games of motorsports.
Well, you know, we've been talking about what a tough track this is. You can see the cars bouncing along now through the bumps. You can see it, that Schrader is really running hard. Maybe some of these other drivers are running a little easier, but, you know, the drivers are tuned to run. They're race drivers. You know, they want to race. They don't really want to ride. I think Schrader's moving up, and he feels comfortable with the pace he's running. If the car will hold together, he looks awful strong, but you know, those are the decisions the drivers have to make based on how it feels. Maybe Lynn St. James could add a little bit to how you pitch yourself as a driver.
Well, one of the things I observed here is, conversely, you know, Kenny, we're talking about charging to the front. Dale Earnhardt has moved from 7th to 10th. He's kind of moved back a bit, which maybe that's what he's doing. He's pacing himself. I mean, which is not a Dale Earnhardt, you know, typical fashion of driving.
I'll second that.
But there is, you know, 500 miles, even though it's not excessively hot today, I'm sure it's going to get kind of hot in that car. You have to pace yourself, you do. But I think today's competitive field in NASCAR racing means that the pace is just a quick pace, but you definitely are pacing yourself.
This is the action up front. Rusty Wallace battling with Darrell Waltrip.
I'm sorry, I just saw Darrell really did you see, Gary, as he was coming out of there, the car went real high as he was coming out of turn 1, so I hope that the handling hasn't changed there.
But Darrell definitely lost his grip there, and he lost some ground to Rusty Wallace, and Schrader gained some ground. See, Schrader pulling right up behind Darrell. So Darrell
is not working well.
No, he slid almost to the gray area. You know, you can see the black on the racetrack where the cars want to run. And then Darrell slid up towards the gray area. Schrader really gained a lot of ground right there.
I wonder if he's got a tire going down or something not quite right.
They had just made the same mistake that Jeff Bodine made going into that corner earlier this week when he simply stuffed the car in the wall. He admitted that he just got in there a little too fast, and as a result, smacked that wall real hard and bent the car all up. and he had to start back in the field. To update that story, Bodine is now running 9th as we watch Waltrip now try to hold off his teammate Kenny Schrader.
Well, maybe Darrell looks pretty good now, so. Ooh.
Trouble, Jimmy Means. Number 52, Jimmy Means, has an obvious problem. A lot of smoke pouring out there. That's just off the tire, Gary.
You can see that tire flapping. It can tear the whole fender off the car. That's really a powerful thing when that tire starts shredding like that. You can see the inner liner just blew. It was down on the inner liner, then it blew out. The car really dropped. Now it's dragging. Hopefully he can get back to the pits without tearing his oil cooler off. That's much smoke. He might have already damaged his oil cooler or one of the oil lines, but he's definitely in big trouble. A lot of debris. We expect to see a caution here. Only, what are we, 13 laps into the race now.
It's so hard for a driver to slow down enough. You know, you're going slow and you think you're going slow. And just coming from Le Mans, which has the Mulsanne straight, they told me that if you blow a tire, put it in second gear, because you can only go so many RPMs in second gear, so you go slow.
Indeed, the yellow flag has come out. The caution flag flies. Harold Kinder will bring this field under yellow for oil and debris in turn 3, the result apparently of the Jimmy Means incident, although we did have a report that Dick Rickle had lost something off his car in that earlier episode. So it is the first caution of the afternoon. The Jimmy Means team goes under the hood to assess the damage done by that flapping tire. And now for the first time today, we see the new Winston Cup NASCAR pit rule. And that rule is that the teams may not pit until the entire field has regrouped behind the pace car. It's done in the interest of keeping the scoring straight. And on the subject of scoring, let's review the top 10 as they come under yellow here. 15 of 200 laps under our belts today. That is a not controversial rule, but a rule that has met with a variety of different reactions. Pit crews as we watch the second 5 about to come up here. Gant moving up, Kulwicki moving up, Earnhardt now holding his own, and Bodine certainly on the charge. Gary, the reaction of the pit crews. Now what happens is everybody comes up at once.
Well, you can see on the screen as the drivers got the yellow, they're slowing down now, but they really don't pick up the pace car at this particular track until they get almost to the third turn. The pace car will be waiting for Rusty Wallace, so they haven't picked up the pace car yet, so that they won't open pit road. You can see the crews waiting.
Car moving up trying to pick up a lap, but we anticipate that we may very soon see Darrell Waltrip come into that frame.
Well, Dick Trickle, the reason nobody was in front of him, he was one of the only cars a lap down. As we watch Bobby Hill and he's motioning to somebody, Dick Trickle was fighting to gain his lap, regain his lap that he lost from that green flag stop. Now he is right behind the leader, Darrell Waltrip, but he is actually a lap down.
Let's go to Dick Bergman on pit road for more on this tire situation.
Well, Dave, one of the real concerns here at Pocono, and this is the flat that came off Mark Martin's car, one of the real concerns here is guys who get real low in the corners and kick rocks up and throw them on the racetrack. And this morning in the drivers' meeting, one of the competitors asked Dick Beatty, who runs the show here, what are we going to do about rocks in the middle of the racetrack? And Beatty said, we're going to pick them up and throw them at the guys that run so low.
That sounds a bit like Dick Beatty. Waltrip is your race leader. He will run wherever he has to try to keep the field behind him.
Darrell Waltrip's crew had an excellent pit stop there. They came into pit second, came out first. Rusty Wallace came in first, came out second. Dale Earnhardt was probably about 5th, I believe, and he came out 3rd. As you see him racing down into the first turn, remember that Dick Trickle's car is a lap down at this point.
It's a nice tight pack right now. They really are staying tight as opposed to before where they just seem to stretch right out. And Rusty's coming back up.
He'll work his way around Trickle, perhaps without ease, because Trickle is a serious race driver in a good car who seems to have fixed his problem. We'll get the in-car view, Trickle's point of view, as first the 27 of Rusty Wallace and then the 6 of Mark Martin come by, or is that Dale Earnhardt?
It's Dale Earnhardt. It'll be interesting to see how Dale runs now with Wallace, because before he was sort of running that conservative pace, and now that he's running with basically the leader, you know, the front of the pack, we'll see how he runs.
Possibility that they tweaked the car, Gary, on the pit stop?
Exactly. The only reason I would think that for Earnhardt to fall back would be something not right with the car. And so, yeah, I don't think he was laying back early. I think he had an honest problem that he worked on. And now it looks like he's running as well as Rusty Wallace and Darrell Waltrip. There's Terry Labonte and Jeff Bodine right behind them. So Jeff is moving up real well from where he had started. So this is really showing what the pit crews can do. How Jeff Bodine's crew got him up front. How Terry Labonte's crew there with the Bud car, number 11. How they got Terry from farther back in the pack up into the front. So the crews really did their jobs here on these front cars.
What things do they change, Gary, when they're in there? In other words, when they make a pit stop, they're only in there, what, 15, 16 seconds. So what do they change?
Well, there's some terms that have pretty much been adopted by the stock car racers. One of them is stagger, the size of the rear tires. As you watch a real good race with the lead going on here, they probably changed some stagger on Darrell's car. Remember, we saw him slipping a little. He looks a little, well, he's a little high right now, so he's still probably talking to his crew members saying, I need to run a little lower. We got to adjust a little bit better. But they changed the stagger or maybe the wedge settings. Some terms that they use to, you know, the wedge is a bolt that they will turn and adjust to try and keep that car running down low. Just like us here, that's the goal. Everybody's after to run as fast or faster than anybody else and be able to stick down to the bottom.
Well, boy, has Wallace and his team dialed it in here, because they just blew by Darrell Waltrip. And that's a great rivalry. Much has been made of the controversy after Charlotte. That pass was as clean and as pretty as you can make one. And I think Darrell Waltrip knew very well that he was outgunned there. Wallace came roaring up behind him and drove right on by and kept right on trucking. And now Wallace is your leader back where he began, and now pulling away a little bit from Darrell Waltrip.
One comment, Dave, from the pits. Barry Dodson took a couple of rounds of bite out of the car. You're talking about the wedge bolts at Rusty Wallace's last pit stop. The car was a little bit tight when they started out, but as you can see right now, Wallace has certainly got Darrell Waltrip under control. And, both Waltrip and Wallace made 4 tire changes. Good stops for both teams.
Darrell, coming out of that turn 3, Darrell was trying to run the same line, it seemed like that Wallace was, but the car was pushing, and it was just not holding up there in the front. So he definitely is handling right now as well as Wallace is.
Well, you know, they're going to adjust it all day, but the real key is to be running the best at the end. The drivers are going to work on that. They're going to think about it. Darrell's thinking about it right now. What do I do what am I going to have to do to beat Rusty? Earnhart's thinking, what am I going to have to do to get around Darrell? You know, all the way through the pack, everybody's trying to sort their stuff out right now and get it work only on the pit stops, trying to make adjustments, work on their driving styles in the turns, but they're all shooting for the end here, so they're going to, it's like a big chess game, you know, it's so complicated. As you watch, they're pretty much single file in line, and I almost wonder if Jeff Bodine's team may have only changed 2 tires and to get them up towards the front. That's sometimes a trick that a team will use that's farther back in the pack, because you remember Ken Schrader was right up in there, and he's fallen back behind there. Schrader has gone around Jeff now, but Schrader came into the pits well ahead of Jeff Bodine. Now he had to repass him, so Jeff made up a lot of ground in the pits. Maybe it was because of a 2-tire stop.
As we watch Darrell Waltrip try to sort out his problems, if indeed it is a problem with Rusty Wallace, let's reset how they have settled in after that pit stop. Check on the progress of some of the guys who had problems. It is Rusty Wallace, your leader, and Darrell Waltrip second as they work down the backstretch. Earnhardt is third, had moved up to Waltrip's rear bumper and now seems to have fallen back into the clutches of the 4th place car. That is Terry Labonte, and we have the 25 of Kenny Schrader moving back up to 5th, and he has picked up a spot over Jeff Bodine. They've swapped it back and forth. 7th is Harry Gant, 8th Lake Speed, 9th Sterling Marlin, and running in 10th is Alan Kulwicki. Ricky Rudd is 11th unofficially, and Mark Martin's problems may indeed be continuing. He was an early front runner. He is now 12th, and I have not seen any spectacular moves toward the front from Martin, so that may be a problem. The problem right now for Kenny Schrader is Terry Labonte, as they have added, more accurately, I think, would be the inverse of that, because Labonte's problem is Schrader. Schrader has been the go-to-the-front car. Look at this move on Earnhardt. That thing has rocket power as he drives right by the guy who was in 3rd spot. Kenny Schrader, what a story as he comes to Pocono. Started off the season with a 2nd-place run at Daytona. 1 pole. Everybody thought, boy, are these guys salty. And in their next 6 outings, boy, did they run. 25th, 15th, 19th, 27th. 32nd and 14th, and everybody went, hey, whatever happened to Kenny Schrader? Bodine moving up to make it a 4-car party. The important story about Schrader is what has happened since. In his last 5 outings, he has been top 10. In his last 3 tries, he has been top 3. And at Pocono, Pennsylvania, he's a guy who can definitely win the race. He's just dusted Dale Earnhardt and will try to pull away and go after the leaders. Earnhardt will try to hold off Labonte and Bodine. And by golly, with no commercials, I'm having a pretty good time up here, Linda. It's a great race.
Yeah, I'm watching this such intently. I feel like I'm inside the car, particularly with Schrader right now. I think Schrader's got a hot car. He's driving very aggressively. Usually you set your pass up in turn 2 and then get it coming out of 3, and he did it going into, and he had that thing a little sideways coming up out of 2, but well in control, you know, not abusing the car, but using the car right now, and getting all that information, I think, as Gary was talking about, because it is like a chess match, and you're just gaining that information, but at the same time, Schrader's just really driving hard, so I feel like I'm in that car.
I don't think there's a race driver with a wheel in his or her hand who wouldn't love to put him or herself in that car today, because it's a good one. 25 laps are down of 200 the distance here. There's your top 5 with Schrader, the man that we ought to put a big yellow circle around. He is definitely romping and stomping here at Pocono. And the interesting matter of momentum we'll get into in a moment. Kowicki working his way back, as we have mentioned. Late speed, kind of up and down in the running order. Bodine is the man who has come from furthest back in the field, having qualified on the second day after crashing early on. And let's check 5 more spots for you to pick up last week's winner at Sears Point. Ricky Rudd. Martin with a problem, a flat tire on that last pit stop, a concern that they might have a handling problem. Bodine and Shepard as we round out the top 15. The top 2 have been virtually the same all day. And Gary Nelson, let's talk about this issue of momentum. Teams get up like the Schrader team were at Daytona with that second place finish, and then they go right straight into the pits, and then somehow they turn it all around and get things going again. And my question is, what changes?
Boy, if you knew the exact answers to that, you could win every race on every Sunday. But the real tough part is, you know, it's really a team sport. It goes right down to every member of the team. They have to do their job better than the other members on all the other teams that are trying to beat you. So you have to have the good engines, you have to have good engine builders that give you good horsepower, and it's reliable, where you can drive by somebody like we saw Schrader drive by Dale Earnhardt. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. That was very good horsepower. Plus, when he got to the corner, the car handled good, so it stuck good in the corner when he got there. And that makes the driver look good. It makes, you know, the driver has to be able to understand all of that and put it together and be able to drive the car as well as the car is capable of running. So it's really teamwork that makes you rise to the top, let's say. But, you know, as you watch all these people, there's, you know, 20, 30 people behind each of these cars trying to make it competitive. And it's the combination of that whole team that puts the car up front.
We like to think it's all wrenches and ramming the throttle down, but that is not the case. Perhaps the hardest throttle jammer in the bunch out there is Earnhardt. You're watching him at the head of this pack. I want to know more about that car. It's been up and down all day. Let's go to Pat Patterson.
Now we're talking with Richard Childress, of course, the car owner on Dale Earnhardt's car. Richard, seems to be a lot of debris on the racetrack, but nevertheless, Dale is moving up real well.
Yeah, you know, before they threw that caution, he had been staying for 3 or 4 laps. There was a lot of debris over there, and he was afraid of someone cutting a tire down. So he
turn 2?
Yeah.
Other than that, is Earnhardt's car handling like you wanted to at this point?
Yeah, you know, we're just searching for the right stagger combination right now. It seems like we might be a little off on our stagger, but we'll get it here soon.
Well, that's the word from the Earnhardt pit. Of course, Earnhardt leading up there in the points again, bidding for that next championship. A man who is also moving up very quickly is with my partner, Dick Berggren, or down in his pits. That's Jeff Bodine's pit.
He sure is moving up, Pat Patterson. He started out in 16th spot, and he's in 6th spot. And Gary Nelson wondered if that was due to some special pit work, if it somehow or another had to do with taking 2 versus 4 tires. Answer, he took 4 tires, not 2. It was a 21.9 pit stop. And Gary Nelson, I got to ask you a question. Years ago, when you used to pit this team, you did it right here where Bodine is pitting today. You were way up at the far end of pit road, where most of the slower cars were, and you thought that was an advantage. Is it still an advantage, and why are these guys staying up here so far away from the mainstream?
Well, I think Jeff Bodine may have learned a lesson from us. With Bobby Allison, we won 3 races in a row here, and we used that same pit. And with Jeff Bodine, we almost won 2 of the races of the 4 that I worked with Jeff. And what it is that pit there's an elevation change along pit road. And I didn't really want that secret to get out, but it looks like it has. And that pit will give you an advantage because you can get into it a lot quicker because you're actually going uphill. Just when you're putting on the brakes to get into your pit and get a stop, the cars around you are generally going to be the back runners because you're way away from all the action on pit road. And so you shouldn't get blocked in by somebody. You can get out quick. I got a feeling, since you told us Jeff changed 4 tires under the caution, that he probably, a lot of these other cars were blocked in the pits by all the other traffic around him, and Jeff was able to just drive right out with nobody in his way. Darrell Waltrip, meanwhile, has caught right up to the back bumper of Rusty Wallace. Looks like he's getting ready to make a move.
follow those guys around the racetrack here to give you a little more of an idea how this Pocono racetrack works. Before we do that, we'll tell you that Jimmy Horton has retired from the event. That's bad news for the fans up in this part of the country because he is one of the local favorites, graduate of that PIRT circuit up there. The modified racers graduating from that rank to come to Winston Cup. But for Jimmy, it was a short day. Front straightaway, down toward where they get the green flag. You can see Harold Kinder in the flag stand, top left of your screen. Now you see the leaders working through. You see the shuffle behind them, and the 9, perhaps 10 or 12 lane wide front straightaway. Then off into the first turn. Use a lot of brake here, Gary. Got to get the car slowed down, and then back onto the second straightaway. There are actually 3 here. A lot of people talk about the upcoming corner. They're in the straightaway. Tell me about the tunnel turn quickly.
Well, that tunnel turn is so tricky. As you watch Rusty Wallace and Darrell Waltrip approach it, they're wide open here. They just barely crack the throttle right there and dive to the inside, right back on the gas before they actually get to those 2 little tunnels you saw there. Try and stay right to the edge of that black and power on down into the third turn.
They come to the third turn thinking very much about the straightaway that follows it, because as they drop down into the corner, you see Waltrip perhaps pick up a half car length there. His entry speed to the corner a little bit faster, but the key is the exit speed. As Waltrip comes off, he's not able to maintain that half car length that he picked up, and Wallace is the guy who gets the better drive down the straightaway. Exit speed off the corner translates into straightaway speed. That's lap at Pocono. Gary Nelson.
Well, I'm sure you saw Darrell gain on Rusty going into that third turn, and Lynn, being a road racer, I'm sure can add to this, but as you go into the turn, you're setting up for a corner. Well, Rusty Wallace might be going into that third turn just a little bit easier than Darrell, but he's probably able to get on the gas earlier, leading onto the main straightaway. Now they're approaching the tunnel turn, Lynn. Watch as they go into the third turn and see what you think, if it's not that Rusty's on the gas earlier.
Yeah, I think so, because they're pretty equal through the tunnel turn, but I think Rusty then, Rusty's able to pull. Darrell then comes down in. You'll see now he seems to go in the entry speeds a little quicker going into the third turn, but it doesn't really help that much. You can see his front is still not biting as good, and he's having to maybe use a little more car. Rusty had a little oversteer, or a little, it was a little loose. I think that's what it is. Sorry about that. And Darrell is actually the exact opposite. So it's interesting because it's been about maybe 5 or 6 laps since the caution, or maybe a few more, because as the tires get heated, and because I know some of them are running scuff tires and some are running sticker tires, it's interesting to see that the car may change as that gets on, as they get hotter and all that. So it could actually be changing a little bit.
Watching that battle continue, it's pretty well stabilized for the moment. Waltrip perhaps recognizing that all that business of entry and exit speed really wasn't getting him anywhere at all. He was staying put, so he might as well just stay put. So now that's what he's doing. Question from viewer Tim Garrison in Nashville, Tennessee, tuned in on Viacom. Thanks for calling, Tim. Our first question of the day is an interesting one. I'm not sure we have an immediate answer. How does one become a Winston Cup official? Gary, do you have any theories on where these guys come from after your many confrontations with them over the years?
Well, as we
Let me interrupt you because we do want to note this is third place right here, side by side, and Labonte has come back to challenge the 25 car, as it appears that for the moment maybe Kenny Schrader's momentum he had early has dropped. Look down.
What a low line he took there,
I'm just going down as far as I got to go to get around you, buddy, and he's got the spot. Labonte is now in third. Fourth is Kenny Schrader, and Bodine lurks right there in fifth spot. We'll get back to your question, Tim. We've not forgotten you, but we've also got great racing action. And you know, that's what all of America has tuned in for today. Watch it uninterrupted by commercials on Showtime. Labonte has moved to third. Schrader is fourth, and Bodine, defending champion in this race, continues to work his way toward the front. Schrader's slowing down. Bodine is coming around him, and that's because Kenny Schrader is dropping off the pace, and we'll try to find out why. Bodine just drove right by him, but I think the more telling thing there, Gary, was the way Labonte pulled away from Schrader. It was obvious that Kenny slowed.
Yeah, Schrader's falling back in the pack the same way he came up through it. It's like something reversed on him. His handling went away. Maybe it just, as the tires, like Lynn was saying, he may have put on new tires when the other ones may have put on scuff tires or vice versa. But that stuff sorts itself out as you go, and that's what these teams are trying to do, is get their car set up for a long run.
Labonte and Bodine head for the front. At the moment, at least, Kenny Schrader falls from third to fifth. The leaders are stable, with Wallace holding off Waltrip. And let's take another shot at this question from Tim Garrison in Nashville. How does one become a Winston Cup official? Gary, I know a lot of the crew chiefs think that the first priority is that they have to go to ogre school and learn how to be mean, nasty, bad guys. Is that true? How does one become an official?
Well, you know, there's a lot of jokes that I could say about how to become an official, because, you know, it's kind of like an official at a football game. They never get any praise, and they make a lot of tough decisions, and they have to use their judgment a lot of times, and there's always somebody that's upset, like an umpire, let's say, behind the plate. There's always somebody yelling that the ump didn't make the right call or it's a bad call. But these officials, they really go through some training. NASCAR puts them through some training on how to make good judgment calls, how to see what you're doing. There's different specialists throughout the NASCAR official ranks. You know, I think there's probably about 20 officials. And I believe they've all probably came up through Daytona, you know, calls to NASCAR. Do you need anybody? I have weekends available. I'd like to help. A lot of them have weekday jobs, but you know, I've never heard that question from anybody before. So I guess Tim Garrison and
Tim Garrison, Nashville.
Yeah, the best way to look at it would be, I guess, to contact NASCAR.
Yeah, I think we'll answer that 800 call with another phone number. Tim, give them a call down there. They're at 904-253-6711. Write that down, 904-253-6711. This is our number, and the hot number right now is number 17. Darrell Waltrip working to the inside of Waltrip. He stepped up and took a shot at him. He says that they're going to be calling in questions.
He's got it. I'm sorry. He's got it.
He's passed him. Straightaway drive, the key. Waltrip listened to all this talk between the stock car expert and the road race expert and said, well, if I can get my exit speed down, I can get around that guy. And lo and behold, he has done it. Waltrip has retaken the lead in what appears to me, take your pick who wants to deal with this one, a battle of pretty evenly matched race cars when you get right down to it. I think a lot of this is just who wants to put their foot down a little harder for the moment and test the other guy.
Yeah, I think that, and they're learning the car. You know, they're changing some things, or deciding what they want to change, and my God, they're really tight now. I think they're having a sprint race right now. I think they don't want to have a 500-mile race. They're going to get it done right now. It's incredible. It's so competitive, and it is. It's fantastic to watch this.
In Charlotte all over again when they were battling in the Winston. Back and forth, made contact. The majority opinion, if you judged it by the audience response, seemed to be that Rusty was the bad guy. Rusty puts the block on Darrell, and these two guys are having at it. And this is really the essence of Winston Cup racing. Fast, colorful cars, brave, colorful drivers, great personalities, guys who are not afraid to put that foot down, put that fender in there, and mix it up. And this is great action at close to 180 miles an hour.
Rusty's working that car really hard, but it's like all the strategies and all the things in the world, these two guys are just racing. They're having a great time racing. But Rusty's really having to work this car right now.
That is very good racing. You know, Rusty Wallace' car, like you said earlier, had a little oversteer or a little loose, like we might say. The back end of Rusty's car looks like it slides a little bit more on corner X when he's coming off the corner on the throttle than Darrell's. Darrell was able to get a run on him on the main straightaway and pass him, and Rusty went right back over the tunnel turn and passed Darrell.
Yeah, he's definitely loose there, and it's not making, you know, he's not able to get the power down to come off the corner like he was earlier. So his car has changed, it's gone away, and Darrell is really come in.
Darrell says, I'm going to go down and check out the low line on the racetrack. We're going to stay with this battle, but we do want to keep you up to date on what everybody's doing back through the field. We'll swap the first two spots as Waltrip moves back in front of Wallace, and we will roll for you the running order further back through the field. Darrell went in low, came out high. Wallace says, great, I'll do the opposite, and they're neck and neck and fender to fender down the backstretch. We're going to run you back through the field, but stay with this battle. It is tremendous competition, and again, the personality clash between Rusty Wallace and Darrell Waltrip that has been so much in the minds of all the Winston Cup fans all over the country through recent years. Here's your rundown. Waltrip and Wallace, and our graphics operators will have a tough time staying on top of that when Darrell cooperates and puts himself up into his proper position for the moment ahead of Wallace. We'll take you on back through the field as we continue to follow this action up front. A viewer question for Gary Nelson comes again from Nashville, from Jimmy Reeve, and that is, why is not Kyle Petty here today? He's your driver. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with your team right now.
Well, as you know, Jimmy Reeve in Nashville, Tennessee, what we've done is started off this season to build a new team with Kyle Petty as a driver, Peak Antifreeze, Uniden Radios as sponsors, and it's called Savco Racing. And what we decided was, if we're going to build a team, let's just run half the races the first year, call it a building year, then we'll go after the points next year. So at the beginning of the year, we just picked half the races, we didn't get the first Pocono race, but in a month from now, Kyle will be back here racing. So full season next year, half the season this year.
We have activity on pit road now. Richard Petty has pitted the 43 car. Let's go to Dick Berggren.
The problem, David, is a flat right front tire. We've seen a bunch of these go down this day, and apparently Richard's suffering from it as well. He is wearing his fighter's mask to try to keep the carbon monoxide out of his system. He's going to leave and go back on the racetrack and do the best he can from the back of the pack.
Richard Petty is not 100% physically here today, Gary.
Well, he's had to have relief the last couple races, and that's, you know, it's been very hot. Today in the 70s, maybe he'll be okay, but he's been having a problem with the heat. I talked to Dale Inman, Richard's crew chief. They put more air vents into the car, blowing air on Richard. And he also wears a mask that a fighter pilot would wear that filters out any carbon monoxide fumes to help him breathe better and get fresher air. So we're going to have to watch it. He's about to go a lap down here to Darrell Waltrip. That was a very costly flat tire for him. If he loses this lap, it's going to be very tough for him to make it up. But here's the difference. He's got new right side tires. Darrell Waltrip's got maybe 15, 20 laps on his tires. Let's see how fast Darrell can go around Richard if he can. I don't know. No, Richard slipped a little there. I think Darrell's pulling right up behind him to put Richard a lap down.
Darrell's car's working. He's put a little ground on Rusty now, and will try to get around Richard Petty as they come up the front straightaway.
Top four really has, you know, they're sort of like equally the distance between 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Rusty Wallace falling back just a little bit from that close racing that they had.
It's been a tough season for Richard Petty, a consecutive start streak of 513 straight races. It ended at Richmond when he failed to make the field, and he's first to tell you, boy, we're having some tough times up here in Level Cross, North Carolina, but the word quit is not in the man's vocabulary, and he insists that he will continue to drive these race cars as long as he enjoys. We asked him about his physical problems, his problems with endurance lately, wondered how he was feeling coming to Pocono.
Pretty good after I run some, and then the heat gets me out. I've still got to work on the deal, build up some resistance to heat. And, you know, we've got everything else working pretty good. The car's running a lot better than it's been running, and it's handling better. And, you know, now the driver's giving out on him, but they're working on him right now.
The man has certainly lost his spirit in the season that has seen him finish no better than 15th in the Winston Cup Wars. But I'll tell you what, from my personal viewpoint, number one, in response to the question, should Richard Petty quit, I say let him drive race cars as long as he's out there and having fun and not in people's way, because he certainly earned that. And if he never finishes in the top 10 again, he has still set records that will stand forever in stock car racing.
Well, he can definitely drive a race car. Just watch him going through the turns. He is fighting to hold Darrell Waltrip from lapping him, and he's doing a heck of a job of it. He's pulling away a little bit in the turn. That's where the driver and Richard really takes a hold. Then on the straightaways, he's got the horsepower to stay ahead of Darrell. So he's really doing a heck of a job. Rusty Wallace falling back in the pack. Terry Labonte is gaining on him for second place.
Second and third place battle heating up. It was for first and second between Waltrip and Wallace. Now it's Wallace versus Labonte, and it is the race for second. And let's see if Terry will come out of line and perhaps try to drag Jeff Bodine along with him. For the moment, Kenny Schrader has proceeded on backwards with Dale Earnhardt. We'll update you on their lack of progress here in a few moments, but they're going backward, and Labonte is the guy going forward. Ricky Rudd has come on pit road, last week's winner. Pat Patterson is there.
Well, Larry McReynolds had the signboard out. This is a regular gas stop for these guys. No problem on the tires, as most of the cars that we have had in the pits recently have had bad problems on the tires. McReynolds worked around and either took a little wedge out of the car or put a little in, and Ricky Rudd is down and away.
Ricky Rudd scoring his second victory for the Kenny Bernstein, the great drag racer, and his team. Bobby Hillen has come on pit road, and you see the jack go down, motioning to his crew. Gary?
Well, you know, we hear some talk on the NASCAR scanner. We have some spotters that are listening for us, and they say there is some debris on the track. Some of these crews are trying to hopefully take advantage if they think there's going to be a caution coming out. I think they go a little bit farther on their gas, but if the caution does come out because of this debris on the track, then they will have the advantage of already making their pit stop before that pit road gets closed off.
So they're rolling the dice here. They overhear. And Gary, let's talk a little bit more about this. You're the crew chief. You're down there with a headset on. Your car is out on the racetrack. You're listening to a lot more than your driver, and you're taking a lot more than just what he's telling you into account. You hear word from NASCAR, you act accordingly. Elaborate on that a little bit, Phil.
Boy, I know Richard Petty was hoping for the caution because Darrell Waltrip just got around him. But what you do, you're trying to shortcut that new rule by making a pit stop early, hoping the caution comes out. If NASCAR has spotters around the track, they'll look at that debris and say, well, it's just a piece of rubber, it's harmless, or it's a piece of metal, it could cut a tire, so let's put out the caution to get the track cleared. So these crew chiefs are smart enough to have scanners to listen into NASCAR, and hopefully they can make a decision. Now look at Rusty Wallace. He was falling back, though. He may have a problem that he's trying to correct, and it's probably getting close to pit stop time, and they might as well go ahead and do it. Dick Bergman, I believe, is in Rusty's pit.
Sure am, Gary Nelson. I just talked to Jimmy Bakar a moment before this pit stop. He's the chassis expert here. He said they'd taken a round of wedge out of the car in the last pit stop. They wish they hadn't done it, and right now that round of wedge is going back in again. Changing the right side to rights only, and off they go.
Pick up on Dale Earnhardt's crewman running over there to help get that tire out of Rusty's way and let him go on by. The drivers are friends, the crews cooperated. That, I think, is typical of the kind of thing that you see. That tire could have been a problem for Rusty, and obviously any problem for Rusty is an advantage for Earnhardt in that they're battling for the championship. But these guys are concerned on pit road. They don't want to see anybody get hurt. That's the first thing in everybody's mind. He went out and retrieved the tire and helped them out.
Now for Richard Petty, well, he's hoping for no caution because Darrell will be making his pit stop before very long. All the leaders, in fact, will be making their pit stops. You know, Richard Petty just did stop just a little bit ago, went down a lap just a little bit after that stop, and then hopefully these leaders will come into the pit. Richard Petty will regain his lap and be able to run on the lead lap until maybe a caution will come out and let him close back in.
You have questions that we're not dealing with here in the booth. Your number to call is 1-800-722-3118. Darrell Waltrip leads, and Dale Earnhardt has gone pit road. Earnhardt has come in for a pit stop. The crew going to work on that car. Pat Patterson.
What a great pit stop for Earnhardt's crew, the world's fastest pit crew, I might add, the last few years. And it was a good quick stop as they worked on the right side of the car, and Earnhardt is back at the track.
Run the last 3 laps at 149 miles an hour, and that's just 5 off where they qualified. So the pace is certainly hot here today, and Earnhardt works himself back up to the pace with a car that has been a bit of a problem for the Childress crew. But those guys are perhaps the most patient team I've ever seen in racing. If they don't have it right, they don't panic. They just keep working on it, working on it, and working on it, and trying to get it right. Darrell Waltrip won the Daytona 500 on the basis of fuel mileage. A lot of people said, now just how many gallons of fuel were in that gas tank to allow Darrell to outlast everybody and win the race, and the officials checked that, I would think, very, very cautiously and carefully, and came up with exactly the right number of 22 gallons. But here at Pocono, it's a fuel mileage race for reasons that we'll ask Gary Nelson about here in just a couple of minutes. Pocono has been won and lost by the issue of fuel, and we asked Darrell about being so far ahead of the other teams in the fuel mileage department.
I told Jeff coming up here, they did a release, the PR people did, about us getting good mileage and what a factor that is in this race. I told Jeff, I said, you know who'll run out of gas at this race? Us. So we know we get good mileage. Randy Dorton and Kenny Bingham, that's part of their program is to get good mileage. It doesn't have anything to do with me or the car or anything else. It's just in the motor itself. It's a very efficient motor. So we will try to use that to our advantage Sunday and not our disadvantage.
We're approaching the quarter pole of this race. A report that Alan Kulwicki is coasting on the racetrack. The track record holder here at Pocono has not had a good week. Mark Martin has come on pit road. Kulwicki, is coasting pretty fast. Engine sounding decent as he went by, perhaps some sort of fuel pickup problem, but he did not go to pit road. Let me quickly ask Gary Nelson, because I sense things are going to start to happen pretty fast here. Why is fuel mileage such a big deal at Pocono?
Well, Pocono has always come down to fuel mileage. I guess because we get these long green runs where there's not a lot of cautions to have the benefit of filling up, you know, every time you get to about a half a tank like some of the short tracks have done. It looks like Alan Kulwicki may have run out of fuel. It's hard to say, but he is well off the power and coasting around. That's another bad thing about this track. It's 2.5 miles around. It takes forever to coast. You know, you don't have the bank track where you're running 190 miles an hour through the turns. you can coast a long way, but poor Alan Kowicki, he's got a long way to go at a slow pace.
Kowicki may have made a strategic decision there because we had the report that the car had cut out. When he came by start-finish, he appeared to be under power. I'd speculate that the thing came back to life, and he drove right by the pit entrance thinking that it was going to run all the way around, and it ran about 500 yards and quit again. So then he's faced with that 2.5-mile coast. Darrell Waltrip continuing to stretch his legs here at the backstretch, and we're going to go down on pit road and find out more about that Kowicki story.
Well, the story, Dave, they thought at first that they may have lost the fuel pressure in the car. The drivetrain, they have something that's broken in the drivetrain, and the crew chief and the crew are waiting right now to hope to get Alan back around. As I look behind me, he's still not there. But apparently something wrong with the drivetrain on the 7 car.
So much for the issue of fuel. Fuel drives motor, but the drivetrain drives the rear wheels. And we have a report now that, for the record, the 25 car of Kenny Schrader has been in and out under green and successfully made his pit stop. Kowicki continues to coast.
But he's running very slow. That's a third turn. He's about halfway through the third turn. If he doesn't get it going, or if he's not under his own power, he's going to come to a stop on the racetrack. There will have to be a yellow flag. It's going to be bad news for Richard Petty, good news for Darrell Waltrip. It's, you know, cautions always go for somebody and against somebody, but it doesn't look like he's going to be able to make it around. I don't know. He's slowly, he might have a little bit of power. I don't know. It's hard to say.
He's not creeping very fast. Obviously, these cars will roll a long way because they go to such great lengths to reduce all the friction in the situation. The cars will free roll. We'll see if we can give a listen to NASCAR here and find out what kind of calls they're making about this situation. Kowicki may or may not make it. We're going to be listening into NASCAR because during the course of the day on the radio, they'll make a lot of calls and a lot of decisions about what to do in a situation like that. I'm amazed at how far that car is rolling. Waltrip's going to go.
Looks like he might have.
Let's go to Dick Bergman.
Dick Bergman is down with Darrell Waltrip, who's pitting now. I want you to realize that some of the hot dogs, Rusty Wallace, Dale Earnhardt, pitted many laps ago, so Waltrip's getting better fuel mileage than them. However, Jeff Bodine is still on the racetrack, as is the 11 of Levante. Waltrip still taking fuel. Takes longer to put fuel in the car than change the tires. 15.3, a good stop for Darrell Waltrip. By the 14.3, by the way, that's the same type motor, exactly the identical motor that Schrader runs. So Schrader should also get good mileage if it's just in the motor.
Waltrip moving back onto the racetrack. Kowicki has stopped on the entrance to pit road, but just down off the apron. Still no yellow flag. That was a green flag stop for Darrell Waltrip, as the Kowicki incident here creates questions in the minds of some of the teams. Strategic decisions to be made. They have elected not to throw the yellow, and Kowicki is parked, and what are they going to do with it?
That's one of those judgment calls the officials have to make here. Should we put a call? Is it a hazard for Kowicki to be stopped there, or can they run out and push him on in? That's a judgment call on NASCAR's part. You know, the teams have to gamble. Darrell Waltrip, seeing if they thought the caution was going to come out, the best thing he could have done was get 4 tires as he repasses Rusty Wallace here. You know, Rusty and Darrell must have had pretty close to equal pit stops because they came in almost together, Darrell came out just a little behind Rusty. But that may have been a difference from Rusty having the new tires for a few laps more than Darrell. But, you know, Alan Kowicki's car hasn't moved, no yellow yet, nobody's out to push it, so it's one of those calls that you know they're going to seal off pit road. You know you just got 2 tires in gas. Now if the yellow does come out, do you come in and get the left side tires and refill again? Do you stay out there like Darrell Waltrip as the leader? Richard Petty's back in the lead lap. He knows that that's going to be a break for him if the yellow does come out. A lot of things happen. It's, like I said, a big test game.
Well, what about poor Kowicki, though? He's sitting out there in the car. There's nothing he can do. He doesn't have power. He can't drive off pit road. I guess the obvious question is, how long does this go on before somebody does something? It's a chess game in which somebody has to make a move, Gary.
Yeah, it's that NASCAR judgment. You know, they run the show. They decide that Kowicki's not a hazard. They're going to lead the race under green. They don't like to see caution periods. They really don't. They think if they can do something to, oh, well, yeah, the caution's out now. The leader, Darrell Waltrip's getting the caution.
We're going to eavesdrop on NASCAR, see what we can pick up in the way of radio transmission about this episode, about this incident here. We will yellow flag it.
As a driver, that's
turn 1, he's backed off for you. Green scoring stand. Confirmed. Scoring confirmed. Backed off real good for you, caution car. He's just now going into the middle of Long Pond. Clean up, I'm going to need you. I want you to lightly dust turn 3. We're going to go over where we hit it the first caution.
that they did, because it was pretty tough to be able to change engines. As we watch the field coming off the third turn, getting ready for the green, let's watch them start.
Coming back to the green flag, we've had the first opportunity to listen live through radio transmissions, and we'll have more during the course of the afternoon. But right now, what we have is a wholesale battle. Look at them. I love it when they go 5 and 6 wide, and I got to think the drivers love that too.
Well, Harry Gant, the leader, he did real well. He probably, I don't know, but he may have taken that move and gotten 4 tires, and during the green, when they saw Kowicki's car stop and filled up with gas and not had to come back into the pits, he inherits the lead anyway, but he looks like he's plenty strong enough to keep the lead. That Dick Trickle, he's going to the garage with master cylinder or brake problems.
They're going to have to go back and do some work on that car, which is stopped now in the middle of the garage area. Also absent from the restart was Alan Kowicki, who ultimately, in fact, brought out this caution flag, which we have just completed. Kowicki is stopped on the garage area, and we should go, I think, for that to Dick Berggren.
Well, Alan, there's an awful lot of feet sticking out from underneath your race car. What are those guys doing under there?
Well, I think we broke a flywheel or the flywheel bolts or something like that. Something in the drivetrain broke.
You going to try to get it back out again?
Depending on what it is that broke, we're not quite sure yet. We'll try. They're doing their best.
Whatever it is, it's major. This is the guy that holds the track record here, but he's not going to win the race today. He's going laps down as the work goes on.
The attrition list today also includes Derek Cope, who has reportedly dropped out of the race and apparently for the day. Derek Cope is done as well.
Boy, tough luck for Alan Kowicki. He said he had a broken flywheel. Now, that does a lot of damage when a flywheel breaks. It's a big ring that the clutch hooks to, and when it comes apart, it can really destroy a race car. The parts are moving like maybe 7,500 or 8,000 RPMs, and they just fly all over the race car. So Alan Kowicki will have a tough time with that car. But Dick Trickle also with a master cylinder problem. That's a long process to change. It's a small part, but it takes about 15 minutes to change it.
Let's watch this field come up the front straightaway, see if anybody ducks out of line. The question to Lynn St. James is, when you're in that situation and everybody darts out and you go 4 and 5 wide, how do you figure out who to follow? Is that a guessing game?
Well, you've got to really know where your car is working the best. You don't want to move it around that much. You want to get in the draft. In fact, we had a question here from Danny Handley, who called in from Whitbury, California, on how important is the draft. And the draft is critical, but you don't want to chase it either. If you start moving your car zigzagging down the straightaway to chase the draft, you're going to still then create some side scrub factor that's going to slow the car down. So if you see somebody and you know they're running hot, then you can sort of tuck in behind them. But you don't want to get distracted by cars going 4 wide down the straightaway. You want to stay in the best, cleanest line you can.
What happens when you get to turn 1? Obviously, if you're coming off that lane out by the wall, you got a nice gentle arc into the corner. If you decide, hey, I'm going to run down there on the inside lane, 9 lanes in, when you get to the corner, you got to pinch it pretty hard.
That's right. So you got to know how your car's working. If you know you can get down low and your car will hook up and stay down there, then it might be worth the advantage of getting the draft. But you can pull that draft down the straight and then be in a whole heap of trouble when you get into turn 1.
Dick Berggren has unhappy duty for the moment. He's going from car to car among the dropouts here today. Let's go to Dick.
Well, they won't call this guy a dropout. Dick Trickle, you got a pile of people working under the hood of your car. What are they going to do for you?
Well, something went wrong with the brakes here, and they're working on the master cylinder. I'm not sure what's wrong, but I don't want to annoy him and ask him too much, because whatever's wrong, they're trying to fix. So I'll just sit here and ride it out.
Were you driving this race car without brakes, Dick?
No, we still had brakes, but we're going to be without them, and we don't need to lose the whole car, so best to fix it now. And at the driver's meeting, they say if there's a problem, they always tell you, go in and fix it rather than cause a wreck and get everybody else in trouble. So that's what we're doing.
That's a smart move. This is an experienced race car and driver, and boy, have they got some people working under the hood of this thing to try to get him back on the speedway. I'll bet they're going to do it.
A couple of observations on Dick Trickle. There's the move down to the inside, and that is Rusty Wallace making that move. He's after Terry Labonte to try to pick up a spot. Dick Trickle, 47 years old, considered a rookie by NASCAR standards. I thought the thing that struck me first in that interview was, I really don't know what they're going to do. I'm going to leave that in their hands. It's my job to drive this race car. The man has total faith in that team and is totally willing to rely on their judgment and their direction. He gives them the feedback. What they give him, he goes out and races. And the other thing I think is the rookie attitude about the rules. If they said take it to the garage, he's going to take it to the garage. He's a rookie. He's not here to make waves. He's here to learn how to be a Winston Cup stock car winner. This is your second battalion now. It's led by Jeff Bodine. It includes Bill Elliott and his Ford, and Dale Earnhardt, and that ought to be a pretty heated battle before this thing is all over. And in fact, I guess when you boil that down, you've got all three of last year's contenders for the championship, including old Rusty Wallace.
I was going to say, it includes Rusty Wallace, who's now really hooked up. So that decision to go with those 4 tires, changing the stagger, I think the car looks like it's definitely working a lot better than it was, and he is aggressively moving with that pack and maybe through that pack. Really likes to run low there, which is where you've got to be on this track to be able to pass anybody. You do not want to get out of that groove here, even though it's a wide racetrack.
Boy, it sure is funny how things shuffle around. A little while ago, Ken Schrader was blowing by everybody. Now Rusty Wallace blows by Ken Schrader. Ken Schrader pulls up on the straightaway as they approach the tunnel turn, but then Rusty Wallace looks like he's got more through the turns as he closes. Yeah, he closes on Bill Elliott right there. Change for the lead now. Darrell Waltrip and Harry Gant.
Gant had the lead after the round of pit stops. Darrell said, "That's all, Harry. I'm going back to the front." Waltrip, who predicted that Wallace might be the rabbit in this race, says indeed that he is going to go back up front. Harry will hang on to him. Let's see if Wallace can catch up. Rusty is now 5th, and it's a 5-car party with Bill Elliott right there in the thick of it. He's going after Bodine. Gant is hanging on and trailing that pack now. Kenny Schrader. I put Earnhardt in that battle earlier by mistake. Dale is running right about 10th at this point, and perhaps 100 yards behind this tremendous battle raging at Pocono. And how nice it is to see those guys casting shadows around this place. Bright sunshine at Pocono after a dreary week, and I guarantee you every one of those guys is having fun right now. Let's watch it.
Harry Gant slipped a little going into the turn. It really tightened up everybody right behind him. He lost a couple positions with that slip.
He really did. At first, it looked like Bill was going to go up and try to draft with him, but boy, realized that he was having a problem, pulled right back down.
It was kind of the inverse of Daytona restrictor plate racing, too, where you go down to the inside and get caught out of line and back all the way to the back. And he slipped to the outside and suddenly found everybody driving by him on the inside and couldn't get back into line. So Harry went from 2nd back to, where'd he end up, 4th or 5th in that altercation, and now has Rusty Wallace right alongside to deal with him. Rusty will dispose of him as well, so Harry paid a lap-long penalty for one slip right there, and it's a heated battle up front. Gary, one heated battle that is, at least for the moment, over in Winston Cup stock car racing is the so-called tire war that really dominated this sport for about a year now. Goodyear was in, Hoosier came along, the upstart company won some races, created a lot of turmoil in the garages, and now Hoosier has withdrawn and gone back to Indiana to concentrate on other aspects of racing and also on a new street tire program. I guess my question is, now, a month after their decision, what's the impact on these teams?
As we watched Rusty Wallace move around Bill Elliott for 3rd place, you know, every car in this race is on Goodyear tires. Hoosier pulled out, as most people know, of Winston Cup racing, so everybody is on one tire. As now we see Dick Trickle pulling back on the track, hopefully with the brakes fixed.
Yeah, that didn't take long, did it?
Well, now everybody's on Goodyear tires, and they're on the bias ply tires. We had a viewer call in from Georgia Place, Arcana, California. Are the drivers using radial tires? No, at this race they're using the bias ply tires, the tire that was developed last year during the tire war. Goodyear is definitely coming into the radial tires, but it'll be a little bit farther. They've run one race with them in Wilkesboro. Everybody was happy. They're anticipating it. And I kind of think the Hoosier company saw radials were coming, and they decided to back off a little bit. Boy, you can see the car vibrate as Dick Trickle drives into the turn there.
For what it's worth, Bob Newton of Hoosier firmly disagrees with what you said. He says radials have nothing to do with their decision, Gary, although it's your choice and your privilege certainly to disagree with that. Here's your top 10 as they stand right now. We're 65 laps in, 200 the distance. We've sorted this thing out now after that rather confusing round of pit stops last time out. Schrader has been on a roller coaster ride today, as has Labonte. They now stand 6th and 7th, but obviously it's a close and tight pack up front, Lynn. And there seems to be an awful lot of kind of accordion-like movement here. The pack tightens, the pack loosens, and guys get the combination to move up and then lose the combination and move back.
Well, that's what makes it so exciting, I think, is the fact that the chassis, we can see how the cars are changing with the different tires and all that. So, and the pit stops are still critical. So I think that's what makes it so exciting. And as Gary mentioned, it's a real chess match out there.
5 players in that game right now, tightening it up as they move over the tunnel, the tricky corner here, the corner where quite often we see it become a game of courage. You got to live through there for just a moment, but there's nothing in the rule book that says when and how much you have to live. So in a tight battle, they'll get right at it.
I was talking, I wanted to go back on the tire issue, and I was talking to some of the teams as Rusty now is moving and charging up into second place. And I talked to some of the teams about the tire issue, and the stability is back in, I think, where they feel more confident with the tire because they know that Goodyear's going to build a tire that's safe, and I think it's really, you know, I mean, competition's great, but at the same time, safety and stability is important.
These drivers have to be comfortable. This is what you call a blanket here. You can put the top 5 or 6 cars under a blanket. They're so close. You know they've got, look at this move on Rusty Wallace for the lead. Can you believe it, Dave?
He has really used the inside of the racetrack, braving a loose car and driving on the bottom and just sticking it in front of people, and will now stick it right back up front where he started today. And let's keep
look
in
at
mind,
him pull away. I'm sorry, I can't believe
he's cooking. That car is hot. One motivation he has today is a big chunk of change from the Unical Corporation. It's worth noting here that this little Unical skin game, as they call it, is mounting up to some pretty high dollars. If this race today is won by Rusty Wallace, he can walk out of here with a total of, I believe it's something in the range of $82,000, $83,600 is the figure on the Unical headline today. What they've done is put up $7,600 a race for anybody who can win from the pole. And it has not been done since the second race of the season. So the money has accumulated. The skin, if you will, has added up at the rate of $7,600 a race. It's now $83,600, and I think Rusty wants the money. He's a money driver. He showed that at Charlotte when he took the $200,000, and never mind the controversy, in the Winston at Charlotte, North Carolina. And today he wants the Unical bucks, and when it's all over, he wants the first $1 million bonus ever paid to a Winston Cup stock car driver. He felt like that championship was his last year, but it got away from him, and now he wants to come back and win it this year.
What a charger, that Rusty Wallace. You know, winning the pole takes a lot of, you know, to drive this track in a qualifying lap, you really have to hang it out. You can see Rusty, his back tires are farther. You see him slide right there. His back tires are still sliding more than his front. The car is still on the loose side or the oversteer side, but he's leading the race. He's the fastest car on the track with that car sliding in the turns like that. A lot of drivers would back off. Rusty is driven to win, but another bonus in that would be all the extra money he could get by winning.
He likes it that way. You can tell, I think that's the way he likes to drive the car, and there's something about the car being happy and the driver being happy with the way that car is.
A comfort thing as we watch Harry Gann and Bill Elliott racing now.
Race for third here with Bodine in that spot for the moment and being pursued by Bill Elliott. And it's good to see Bill Elliott in the thick of things. He drives around Harry Gant, takes over that fourth spot now. It is basically a 5-car shuffle up front. Make it 6 because Kenny Schrader tacks onto the tail end of that line. But for Elliott, this depressing season as Grand National Winston Cup champion, started off at Daytona with the broken wrist. The comeback took an awful long time, but had his best run of the year last week at Sears Point. He was third. He now runs fourth on this field, and that appears to be a team that is definitely on its way back. We speak of the Sears Point race last week, and the question comes from Arcana, California. What does the broadcast crew think of the future of NASCAR in California? Gary, it's a long way from home. This outfit was in Dover, Delaware 2 weeks ago on a Sunday afternoon, and they've come 100 miles here to Pocono, but they did it by way of Sonoma, California. So that grueling schedule we talked about earlier has taken them all the way out to the coast and all the way back again. Sears Point, a new track. Obviously, Winston Cup racing needs to be on the West Coast.
Well, definitely we need to race on the West Coast in Winston Cup because we got to get the races to the fans everywhere. We can see by all of the, we've been just covered with calls on this 800 number from all over the country, Canada, everywhere, West Coast, Central California, the center of the United States. There's people everywhere interested in Winston Cup racing, and it's growing and growing. It's this kind of competition that we're watching here with Darrell Waltrip and Rusty Wallace all the way through the pack. They're racing for position lap after lap, but they're so fatigued. You know, they've been on the road. From here, they're going to go to Michigan next Sunday, and Kyle Petty and myself will be racing in Michigan. But these poor guys, they've been on the road with jet lag. I bet you there's some serious cases of jet lag out there right now. The mechanics trying to prepare the cars, get a fresh, best car they can put together for each race and hopefully win, because the points pay the same whether you're racing in Sonoma, California, Pocono, Pennsylvania, or Daytona for the Daytona 500. Each race is just as important as far as points are concerned.
To sum up that California issue as we move into our race summary here, bring you up to date on who has survived all that hard work the best. The broadcast crew, I think, believes that Winston Cup racing will continue in California, but they need more racetracks out there. Rusty Wallace has led 52 of 70 laps. That is a charge. He has led every one but 18 of the laps here, with the average speed dropping down to 135 due to the caution flags, 2 of which slowed the field for a total of 6 laps. We have had 5 leaders, which is below the norm here at Pocono. This race has definitely been dominated by Rusty Wallace and Darrell Waltrip, the 2 cars you see upper right. Attrition, not outrageous at this point. Crozier, Horton, and Cope, the only 3 cars officially out of the event. And as we noted, Dick Trickle has returned to action, and Rusty checked that Alan Kulwicki will perhaps try to get back in. But those are the 3 cars that are officially out of the event. Let's recheck how they're running at the top of the field. Rusty Wallace is your leader as you watch it live and uninterrupted by commercials here on television. Wallace is ahead of Darrell Waltrip, Jeff Bodine, Bill Elliott, and Harry Gant. That continues to be a pretty tight battle up front with 70 of 200 laps down. Schrader, Labonte, Speed, Martin, and Dale Earnhardt, Winston Cup point leader, running back there 10th spot. I want to know more about that in a moment, but right now we have a battle for the 6th spot. Terry Labonte bulls up to the inside and decides it's time to have a piece of Kenny Schrader. And who's going to win that race to turn 1, Lynn?
Well, I'd say Labonte, because he's on the low line, and that shows you, I mean, okay, Schrader got it, but the low line is still the way to go. But now see, Schrader couldn't come all the way down. He ended up still on the outside there, and I'd say that Labonte, if he's going to keep his foot down right here, should be able to win this battle. But it shows you also, when you asked about the draft, how important it is. If it was so important, they'd be running nose to tail right now, and they're really fighting side to side and still able to hold equal. But Labonte had that momentum. You know, he was able to keep it, the better line, the low line, and keep the momentum and never gave out of it, so he won. He won that little race.
Speed was tucked onto the back there trying to figure out which guy to follow. Rusty Wallace not following anybody today. There's Lake. We get a look at him. And Mark Martin is climbing back up the ladder here with Earnhardt. We had a report earlier that Martin had gone a lap down. We'll double check that. I believe he has gotten that lap back. Here Speed comes alongside Kenny Schrader, and Earnhardt moves alongside Mark Martin, and this is going to get good in a hurry. They're working a lap car ahead of them. Looks like Jimmy Means, but Speed decided, I'm not going to draft these guys. I'm going to pass him. See Schrader with that high line.
Yeah, and the other problem is you got a lapped car. I think that blue 52 car is on the low line, which is okay, but other than see how high everybody's got to go. So that was going to sort of add to the mix. That, you know, you come on as a driver up a bunch of pack like that, but you got to make sure that they're all running the lead group, because you could have a lapped car in there, which is exactly what happened there.
How easy is it to get caught off guard by one of those slow cars, Lynn, and put yourself in a real box where you pick the wrong line and all of a sudden it's blocked?
It happens, but really first of all, you get a feel. You know that even sometimes the colors of the car, there's just you're coming up on a car, you can tell on the closing speed. We have a lot of that with the closing speed differences. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but that's something you just shouldn't let happen as a driver.
What this has done is tighten things up as Schrader and Speed did battle. Martin and Earnhardt saw that as an opportunity, and they have closed up now to join in the fun. Schrader running now in 7th spot, so that would be 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th that you're watching. And Lake Speed very much a part of the story right now. He finds himself sandwiched between Kenny Schrader and Dale Earnhardt. Lake Speed, one of the first guys to move into the owner-driver business here in the modern era. A guy who fields his own team, runs his own operation, owns his own garage, and is definitely a big part of this story here today, as he's run top 10 most of the day, qualified well, fell back early, and has now battled back into contention here as we work toward the midway point in the race. We watch Sterling Marlin and the number 55 of Bill Parsons coming on by that battle. They would be in 11th and 12th unofficially, so we're trying to mark the field all the way back. But the real battle right now is this one that finds Schrader, Speed, and Earnhardt running in those 3 spots. We wondered about the shape of this racetrack, which is pretty unusual. We asked Lake Speed which part is the most important.
You know, you've got to go all the way around this racetrack fast to make a good lap. It don't make any difference how quick you are in one if you're poor in the other. You know, any track you go to, the last corner before the start-finish line's got to be the most important if you're in a position to win. But I don't think that you can just be excellent turn 3 and give up the rest of it.
Okay, that's the opinion of Lake Speed. A viewer in Wrightsville, Pennsylvania, George Lambert, wanted to ask that same question of Lynn.
That's right, and it really is the turn that leads onto the longest straightaway, so that's turn 3. But I think here what's unique is turn 2 sets you up for turn 3, so you've really got to look at those two turns together as far as what's the most important one. But bottom line is turn 3 because it leads onto that long straight.
Todd Cable's question from California is also for Lynn St. James. Do you want to go Winston Cup NASCAR racing in the future?
Sitting up here watching those cars run? Absolutely. This is a great race going on out there. But I'd love to. I enjoyed taking the Thunderbird Super Coupe to Talladega and doing the record run, and I really learned a lot working with Bill Elliott as well as going to Buck Baker's driving school, and learned that it's a whole different technique, though, and I have a lot of respect for what it takes to get these cars around. But if I could find a sponsor that would want to hang in for about 3 years and the best crew in the team, because it takes a while to learn this. Even, you know, you talk about a Dick Trickle being a rookie here, as many ovals as he run, as many races as he's run, it still just takes a while to learn all that. And I'd have to have that kind of a commitment for enough time to get all that stuff done.
We're watching Wallace pull away from Darrell Waltrip here, so it would take a commitment from someone who would give you the time in the car to learn the game. What else would it take to say, okay, I'm going to park my road racer and go stock car racing? What would it take to put a deal together for you to get into this sport?
I'm really just the sponsorship and that has the funding behind it, and then pulling together the crew to be able to do that. Those are the two elements, because it's such competitive racing. That would be it. I mean, there's no other, factor that would say, no, I wouldn't do that.
We miss you in the broadcast booth, but we'd love to see you out there mixing it up with these guys.
Mixing it up.
This is the kind of mixing it up that you better be prepared for, by the way. They'll give you a little preview here.
A wreck. Lake Speed was waving his hand. Jeff Bodine wrecked in the first turn. Here's his whole pack coming right onto it. Obvious caution. Jeff Bodine must have had a big problem.
Second time this week for Bodine. Stuffed one in there in practice. Destroyed the car. Had to go to the backup. Came back the second day of qualifying as the fastest driver in the field, but starting 21st. And has now smacked that wall again and went in head first again. And Bodine is now parked on the infield grass and is obviously okay as he unstraps and climbs out of the automobile. And that has got to be the most jolting moment that you can possibly experience, Lynn. Boom, all of a sudden you go from 160 or whatever to a dead stop.
It is. It looks like Jeff is limping a little bit. I hope he's okay. But, you got the adrenaline going, and you have your mind is set. You got a job to be done. You're going to be in a race car for 4 hours, 4.5 hours. And when that happens, it's like bingo. It's like somebody cut your arms off or something, that it's just so quickly comes to an abrupt end. Very, very disappointing. But as I said, he was limping. I hope he's okay.
The most unhappy spectator here today is Jeff Bodine. He's got his sponsor's cap in his pocket. Bodine has already lost it here at this point and impacts hard with that boilerplate that surrounds this racetrack. It's
maybe the most expensive item out here and the most sought-after item, I might add. Each one of these cars that have gone out of this race, and Bodine's car had just barely stopped rolling down there before there were 3 teams down there trying to buy his tires to get up stacked up. As a matter of fact, Rusty Wallace's team was down there and a couple of others.
Thank you, Pat Patterson on pit road. Quick work by the officials and the repair crews here at Pocono, who've had some experience in this situation before. And looky here, we're ready to go back to green in the Miller High Life 500. Down they thunder towards start finish. Wallace going for the charge. Here they come. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 wide. And trying to get his lap back there was the number 4 of Rick Wilson. Not able to do it. That outside row trying to stabilize, and it looks like they should be able to pinch everybody off on the inside. Wilson will dart into line in about 3rd spot, but laps down. And once again, they've survived this big restart thrash. It's always pretty exciting here.
Darrell was really ready to move, and he got boxed in. It was like he was trying to find his way through, but Rusty had the head there, had the lead, so he was able to get it. But boy, Darrell was ready. He had a good jump on that start.
Well, it's a deal where NASCAR tells the drivers nobody can go until a green flag waves, and that's a deal where, Darrell, it used to be a driver farther back in the pack would pull out a line and start passing before the green was out, but now they'll black flag you if you do that. So they have to be in line until the green flag starts waving. Darrell was trying to anticipate it and get a run going on Rusty Wallace, and just then Rick Wilson was right in the way, and he had to back off and fall back behind Rusty.
If you've just joined us, we're approaching the midway point of this Miller High Life 500, uninterrupted by commercials and live here on Showtime Event Television. The leader is Rusty Wallace, and he has led most of this race. I believe it's still 18 laps that he has not led. The second place man virtually all day has been Darrell Waltrip, and they've played a little bit of tussle with the lead, but for the most part, that has been your top two, and they're right back there again as they work their way down the backstretch. That has been the story of this race, a two-man show. I think that's a little bit of a surprise. I'm not sure anybody expected that these two cars themselves would be that solid all day, and only in the sense not that they wouldn't be solid, but that nobody else would really be able to come up and mix it up with those guys, but it just hasn't happened. Wallace working his way through the statistical record book as well into what he hopes will be his first ever championship. He wants that really badly. Let's go back to Dick Bergman as we watch the top two cars. We'll reset the rest of this top 10 for you right after the yellow flag, but first let's go to Dick.
Dave, coming in this morning, I saw something I've never seen here at Pocono, and I've been coming to this racetrack since the big super speedway behind me wasn't even built. There was just a little three-quarter. And what I saw this morning coming in was a great big sign that said, "Grandstand sold out." This is by far the biggest crowd that has ever come to the Pocono International Raceway. They've come here to see Winston Cup racing, and wow, are they rabid fans. Last night, they lined up in the tunnel that goes underneath this racetrack, and they snaked their way all through the area behind the suites in order just to see some drivers. There was a line about a half a mile long, about 4 deep, just to get an autograph. These people love their racing, and they're seeing a great show today.
For years, it was known as a Southern sport. It has certainly become a national sport, and you're seeing it live here on Showtime today with no commercial interruptions, and we welcome you here. We're glad you're here. We welcome every one of these race fans part of it as well. Showtime Event Television with really a unique opportunity today for the race fans. Here they come by the field. We'll reset it for you. It is Wallace at the head of the pack. Waltrip is second. Last time by, Bill Elliott had climbed to third and consolidated that spot. And behind him comes Terry Labonte, the man in black. Dale Earnhardt running fifth. Mark Martin, Ricky Rudd, Harry Gant, Sterling Marlin, and Phil Parsons by unofficial rundown, rounding out the top 10 at this point. And again, this point is just 10 laps short of halfway, 25 miles short of the halfway point in what has been essentially a clean race today. We've had just 3 caution flags, one the lengthy one for this hole in the wall, but really by caution flag standards, that was not excessive. We wondered if we might not see this race stop once Bodine poked that hole in the wall up there, but I think this time, Gary, they were ready for it. They had just dealt with that situation a year ago, and they were ready to go with it.
Oh, yeah, they did a heck of a job. You know, it was over, I think about 45-minute delay last time when they repaired the wall. What was it this time? Maybe 10, 15 minutes at the most. It was a great job.
Seemed like no time at all. We didn't get a chance to answer as many questions as we thought we might. We'll confirm that top 10 for you here. Wallace, Waltrip, Elliott, Labonte, Earnhardt running top 5 on Father's Day here at Pocono. With now 90 of 200 complete in the Miller High Life 500. Second 5 has Martin, Rudd, Ant, Marlin, and Hillen. And the only change there from what we gave you is Hillen passing Parsons to take over a spot. Here's the beer battle as Labonte moves down to the bottom and takes the measure of Bill Elliott, and that is the race for third. Well, tries to take the measure. Bill wanted to run her back in on the outside and then realized that's not a good thing to do at the tunnel. I'll just duck back underneath him. He knew Labonte wasn't going to get through there, didn't he?
He timed that so well. He timed that beautifully because he knew he wanted to be low, but he sucked him up high and then dove down. Really timed that well.
Great driving by all 3 of those drivers. This is great racing. Bill Elliott in the number 9. Dale Earnhardt in the number 3 going by Terry Labonte in the number 11.
So forget all that stuff about Pocono being a tough place to pass. You just got to know how to do it. That battle you're watching is the one from the third car back on your screen. You get that unique perspective here at Pocono as we watch Labonte come out of line, going after Earnhardt, and then electing to duck back in behind, really just feeling his way and getting a little loose there as he cocks her sideways with the resurgent Mark Martin on his heels. Question from San Antonio, Texas. Do they all run the same type of fuel? Are there any rules for the type of fuel used, especially regarding qualifying? Gary Nelson.
Very good question out of Texas. The Union 76 company, Unocal, supplies the fuel to all the race cars, so they're all on the same fuel. NASCAR takes samples of the fuel all the time during practice, during qualifying, after the race, even before the race, to make sure there's no additives been added, and they have a very good test. If anybody changes their fuel or makes any adds any chemicals to it to make it better, there's a $25,000 fine and a 12-week suspension. So you can be pretty sure with all those checks and with all of that much of a penalty, all of these cars are running identically the same fuel.
Rocky Robinson in San Antonio. The answer is they all run the same fuel and it comes out of the Unocal pumps. And Cal has put up what this week amounts to $83,000 in prize money for anybody who can win this race from the pole, and Rusty Wallace certainly appears determined to do that as he has dominated today. Earnhardt now becomes the man on the march. Len, the guy that they call, the Dominator. He's had a lot of nicknames over the last 4 or 5 years. The Dominator was the one that certainly seemed most fitting when this team just clobbered everybody, but now he's starting to look like the Earnhardt we're used to seeing.
He's a racer through and through. I think that, he drives very aggressively, but he's solid. And like you were saying earlier, that when the car's not right, he just does what he has to do to get the car around as well as he can. But boy, when that car's right, he's just absolutely a killer. I think Rusty Wallace has kind of a similar kind of, driving style, but it seems like he's now got the handling in the car working pretty good. I think Dale does. He's running right up in the front as opposed to sort of a little bit further back like he was early on.
Trying to get around Bill Elliott, and if he can do that, he can perhaps then mount an assault on the 2 cars up front, that being the Pontiac of Rusty Wallace and the Chevrolet Illumina of Darrell Waltrip. Earnhardt wants into the thick of that battle because that, of course, is your championship battle right there, with the Earnhardt camp leading the way, Waltrip second and Wallace third at this juncture, and a big run last week at Sears Point, second place for Rusty Wallace, enabling him to close up within 18 points of Darrell Waltrip. So it's a tight championship battle and a tight race battle, but again, all day long, it's been these 2 cars with a shuffle of positions behind them. From third on back, it's been anybody's ball game, but these 2 guys have run up front. There you got a question there.
Well, we had a viewer call in, Jeff Robertson from Tucker, Georgia. Do you set the car up any differently since the tunnel is so difficult to maneuver? We saw Bill Elliott pass, or we saw Terry Labonte pass Bill Elliott going into the tunnel turn, the second turn, and then we saw Bill Elliott go right by coming off the turn. Now they're leaving the first turn. As we watch Bill Elliott and Rusty Wallace approach the tunnel turn, you really can't set up the car just for one turn on this racetrack. You have to compromise. Try and get it as best you can on all 3 turns. People talk about the one leading onto the straightaway. That's probably the most important. But this turn right here, the tunnel turn, is the most difficult. Right there, we saw Bill Elliott get past and retake the position away, all in a matter of about a second. So it's quite a turn, but you got to really compromise for all of the turns here.
As you watch the cars go over the tunnel, it almost doesn't look like a turn. I've got the question of the day. This one has got to go to Dr. Dick down to the pits. Dick Berggren, Eddie Barnett from Auburndale, Florida, asks the question, is there a magazine that follows NASCAR racing?
Eddie, you just asked the favorite question anybody could possibly ask. As a matter of fact, there is, and ironically enough, the name of the magazine is Stock Car Racing Magazine. I just happen to be the editor of that thing, and we do it every single month, and we'd love to have you as a reader, Eddie.
I knew Dick would have an answer on that one, and thank you, Eddie, for being interested. I suspect that's a new fan, perhaps, who's learning a little bit about our event here in our series, and we certainly welcome him. We're going to eavesdrop on the NASCAR radio because we are coming down to the midway point in that race. We're just about 5 laps away from midway. Let's see what NASCAR is talking about. Well, NASCAR has nothing to say. They're perfectly pleased with the way things are going right now, and I would think they would be. I mean, they've sold this place out for the first time in the history of Pocono Raceway. They've had a tremendous battle all day long with everybody keeping their fenders out of each other's noses and running it clean. They've had one incident that involved Jeff Bodine and a hard smash into the turn 1 wall, and they handled that with the kind of professionalism that one would expect of a multi-million-dollar sporting cavalcade like this. They got the race back underway quickly, and all day long we've had cars scrambling for positions. What more could they ask? They're sitting back and enjoying the race, just as we hope you are at home. We're seeing Bill Elliott, Dale Earnhardt, and Terry Labonte, 3 Winston Cup champions, running in formation. Elliott, of course, the current champ. Earnhardt, the 2-time winner, and Labonte winning the crown back in 1984. Questions continue to pour in on our 1-800 line, and we welcome those calls. How is Terry Labonte? Let me give you that number again. 1-800-RACE-118 is our number here. 1-800-RACE-118. Question comes from Doug Sigmund. watching in Atlanta, Georgia today. How is Terry Labonte dealing with the change from General Motors to Ford? We're watching Terry in the middle of this battle. A question would probably best go to Gary. How big a change is it really from one brand to the other?
It's a pretty good change. You know, you have to get used to the different aerodynamic effects of the different body styles, you know, and that's really the biggest thing. The engine power peak power is about the same. Some of the torque will be a little different. So Terry was going to have to, he would have to learn how to drive a car with slightly different aerodynamic characteristics. But then again, the Chevrolet teams went from Monte Carlos to Luminas during the middle of the season, and that's basically the same type of thing. These are race drivers, and they really are able to adapt themselves to changing conditions on the racetrack, changing conditions, you know, with tires and handling problems, and they're also able to adapt pretty quickly to a different body style.
I want to hear more about the Lumina. Another word on Terry Labonte, of course, if you follow this game regularly in those magazines that actually do cover this sport, you probably know that there's been a lot of controversy about where Rusty Wallace is going to drive next year, a lot of speculation about what Junior Johnson's going to do. Wallace's contract is up at the end of the year with his team, the Raymond Beadle team, and he is openly admitting that he's shopping himself around. Terry Labonte's contract is up with Junior Johnson, and the most authoritative word we've heard on that is that Terry is building a race shop. For the record, it is for his brother Bobby to run the Grand National car from the, I guess educated speculation perhaps from our sources that Terry Labonte may very well become an owner-driver next year. Terry says, well, that's just one of our many options, but as we understand it, that might be the option that Terry likes best right now. So we'll keep an eye on that situation. Terry Labonte making his decisions for 1990 right now, making a decision about how he's going to get around Dale Earnhardt, and I think he may have it figured out as he ducks to the bottom, uses the draft. Martin says if he's going to get by, I'll try to tuck in underneath him, and we'll just wedge old Dale on the outside, keep him there, and old Dale says you will not. Labonte gets by, Martin does not. Great action here as they mix it up in the race for 4th, 5th, and 6th spot in the Miller 400. I love watching stock car racing.
You know, you were talking about the things that happen behind the scenes, you know, with who's going to drive what car next year. That's almost like a jockey for position like we see here. These guys are jockeying for position. Well, they're also jockeying for positions behind the scenes on which car they're going to drive.
Speaking of behind the scenes, let's listen to NASCAR here. We're approaching the midway point in the race, and we'll see if they have anything to say here. The flags say it all for the drivers. 100 laps down, 100 laps to go. Harold Kinder obviously knew when to wave them. Somebody was counting for him. Did not need the radio transmission to know that it was time to get those cross flags out for Rusty Wallace. Wallace the leader and Waltrip running second. And a question from Greg Hallam as these guys battle for the Winston Cup Championship. Would you explain scoring system and points? Well, it's not as complicated as it seems, in fact. The winner of this race will get 175 Winston Cup points. The second place car will get 170, third 165, and it continues in 5-point increments all the way back through the last finishing position. There are 2 bonuses that are offered, and one of those, Gary, don't let me get off course here. The bonuses are 4 because it's very important and they really scramble to keep after it. It's really the only, let me back up one more step. The key criticism of the system is that there's no bonus for winning. What are the bonuses for?
Well, you're keeping up pretty good with it so far, Dave. What it is they pay anybody that leads any lap during the race 5 bonus points. So Rusty Wallace and Darrell Waltrip have received bonus points, Harry Gant today, all for leading just 1 lap. Now, if you lead more laps than anybody, the most laps of the race, then you get 5 extra points. So you can win as many as 175 points by leading the most laps and winning the race. But those are the only bonuses allowed in the point system. It drops on back, and it's really, every racetrack is the same.
100 laps down. Here is your race rundown, as will enable you to catch up on where your favorites stand, or if in fact they have fallen out of this event. And Lynn, you've been keeping the lap times on these guys as they run through midway.
Well, I have, because there's a sort of a setting pattern here and a consistency, and I just did a couple of stopwatch laps on Rusty, and he's turning 59.51 seconds a lap. Bill Elliott, who's running third and seems to be leading that second pack, is turning 59.59 seconds. So that's only 0.8 of a second. which you think, gee, that's really, really close in time, and it is, but that comes out to 18.5 feet per lap that Rusty is pulling away from Bill, because they're running very close to the lowest lap times. Well, 18 feet, you know, is a bunch. When you think about each lap, he's getting another 18 feet.
That's a car length every lap.
Yeah, so that's what's sort of happening now in this set that they seem to be taking under green.
That's what you fight for, that 8 tenths that Bill Elliott is short. He wishes he could get it, and they're talking to their crew, I'm sure, about let's adjust this, let's tweak it just a little bit. Maybe we can get just a little more out of it. As you see, Darrell Waltrip, he gets a little bit going into that third turn, but not quite enough to pull all the way up to Rusty Wallace. Overall, their lap times are probably pretty close to equal, but Darrell doesn't quite have enough to catch Rusty and pass him, or maybe he's just holding that position there and not trying to race Rusty.
27 cars running, the 27 car leading, the Grateful Dead, the next spectacular event from SET pay-per-view. The Summer Solstice Concert 1989 will be coming to you live from Mountain View, California. That's on Wednesday, June the 21st, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific, and only on pay-per-view cable TV. Call your local cable operator for more information, and that will be a good one. And Bill Elliott has slowed down. Summer Solstice at Pocono. My goodness, look at Elliott. He's off the pace here. Second time today that Bill has had a problem. Came in early with tire difficulties, and now Elliott has slowed again. The Winston Cup champion, 1989, definitely struggling as Harry Gant goes roaring by. This time it appears that left front tire is up and the car is rolling. This was a race that promised perhaps to be a turning point for Elliott. They've run well at Pocono. They won twice here in 1985, that grand $2.25 million season, but it looks like they're struggling.
It doesn't look good. The crew's not even preparing anything. They're staying on the racetrack. The crew, Darrell Waltrip in the pits. Let's go down to Pat Patterson.
Well, Waltrip brings the car in, and now we see Jeff Hammond and the crew. They're going to go under the hood, and this is an unexpected problem for Darrell Waltrip. They're taking a look right around the valve covers, Gary Nelson. I'm not exactly sure what the problem is, and I don't think they are either, but the motor is off, and we'll move around and get a work with Jeff as soon as he has got some idea as to what is wrong.
Major setback for a championship contender. Darrell Waltrip with difficulties under the hood. Terry Labonte, as he continues his march up through the field, has picked up a spot, but the key right now is Waltrip in the pits and in trouble, and Wallace on the racetrack and perhaps unchallenged. We have a coasting automobile out there. The indication is that perhaps we have a problem for Jimmy Spencer, and no yellow is flown. The Elliott problem and the Spencer problem have not brought out a yellow flag, so Darrell Waltrip is sitting there under green and in serious trouble. And it's been that kind of a season for Darrell. When they don't win, they seem to have terrible problems. When they don't have terrible problems, they win races. They've won 4 already this year. And Gary, perhaps that brings us to the question we talked about points a moment ago. Now let's talk about the championship battle. Back when Darrell, let's go back down to Pat. We'll get into that in a moment. Let's go back down to Pat Patterson.
Apparently what we have is the fact that they've run all the water out of the car. They've got a hose on the radiator. They have put water in the back into the engine again. Darrell is just kind of revving the motor. Now they're going to put the hood down and I guess go try it a little bit. But Gary, it would have seemed like that they have run all of the water out of the machine.
Appear to have run it dry. Let's see if we can find out more about the Bill Elliott situation, the old rivals for the championship. Now, Elliott going slow. Let's go to Dick Berggren for a report.
And he's not going to go very fast for a while, Dave Despain. They've got all the ignition stuff out here on pit road, but nobody's ready to put it in. And we just picked up a radio transmission that perhaps it's a dropped valve. No matter what it is, Elliott is off. He's not running on all 8 cylinders. Pat Patterson, what's going on at your end?
More of the same. Darrell cranked the car up. They had put the hood back down on it. Jeff Hammond, you can see Jeff and Eddie working on the car over, trying to get more water back into it. And he cranked the car back up. They put the hood down. They were going to take off, and now you see what happened. He started to let the clutch out, and the car died on him again. So they're trying to put more water again back into the car. But this is an awfully, awfully frustrating afternoon for Darrell Waltrip.
Well, it makes you wonder, as we watch the crew trying to fix Darrell's car, it's definitely overheated, as you see all the steam coming out. Bill Elliott's car slows down. Darrell Waltrip comes in with an overheating problem, and the 88 car had a blown engine and coasted to the garage. Maybe the debris from the 88 car punctured Darrell's radiator, maybe something like that may have happened to Bill Elliott's car. It's hard to say, but I'm sure Darrell Waltrip's car he's gonna have a hard time regaining. He won't be able to regain the time he's lost. He's just sitting there, hopefully, to get back on the track and get some points. But an overheated engine that badly will usually crack a cylinder head or blow a head gasket and really cause some problems. This has moved everybody up a little bit. Now these guys, instead of racing for 4th, 5th, and 6th, are racing for 3rd place.
3rd, 4th, and 5th, the battle before you right now. Who can forget 1985 and the incredible Darrell Waltrip and Bill Elliott battle for the Winston Cup Championship that went down to the wire. Today on the same lap, they both hit trouble. And now as Earnhardt tries to get to the inside of Harry Gant, Gant closes him off. Harry having a good run here today. Sandwiches himself between Earnhardt and the black car and the number 6 of Mark Martin. Let's see if we can get a final report on this story on pit road now as we go back to Pat Patterson.
Well, once again, it's just a simple problem of trying to get the water to stay back in the engine. They have cranked it up again, and it appears like they're going to try to put it down and go again. But I honestly think, Gary Nelson, and I think you may have been in this situation before, that you may have to take this back into the garage if you want to fix this problem.
Yeah, as you can see him adding stop leak. That's what he has in his hand over on the right side. That's Jeff Hammond. He's got a hose in his right hand. He's putting water in it, just a regular garden hose. His left hand, he has a can of stop leak. That'd be like a radiator sealant. Hopefully that'll seal up the hole or the crack wherever the water's coming from. And if it's not too big, maybe it'll be able to run the rest of the day. But I can also hear the motor running in the background. It sounds like it's hitting on about 5 cylinders.
Here's your leader, Rusty Wallace. No longer sees that orange car in his mirror, as Darrell Waltrip alluded at the beginning of the show. Wallace sees an awful lot of clear sailing right here at the moment. He's been the class of this field. Harry Gant says, well, if old Darrell's not there to do it, maybe I can get around Mark Martin and go up there and give the leader a few fits here today. Martin, for the record, has obviously recovered from his earlier problem. Fell a lap down in the race, but now will be challenged up the inside. Oh, Harry Gant says there's lots of running room here at Pocono. I'm going to use just as much of it as I need to get around Mark Martin. The squeeze is on in turn 1, but Harry will get there first.
You can see how that inside line is definitely the line you want to be on to make those passes. You've got to stay down low, and Mark fought it. I mean, it was like he wasn't going to give him anything, but he was on the outside, so he was really, really killed there.
Jack Roush, a man you know well, Lynn, is definitely going to be a factor in the stock car racing game. He knows road racing like the back of his hand, and they're learning about stock car racing.
Not only are they just learning, but I think they are really ready. They're ripe and ready to go. Everybody is primed. You can feel the energy with the team. Mark drives his heart out in every race, and they're really solid. It's just a matter of time, and I mean, I think they're anxious for when that time's going to happen.
What's the key to Jack? What makes him tick? What makes him so good at figuring out all forms of motorsports and preparing such excellent equipment and putting together such great teams? You've won in his cars in GTO competition.
Yes, I've won with him, and I've observed his other victories as well, and I know that everybody in racing is committed to winning, but I've still never met anyone in racing like Jack, who is so totally committed to winning races and aware of everything that's going on. Absolutely phenomenal dedication that man has to winning races, and instills that in everybody around him. They all the crew people, the drivers, and everybody knows that that's bottom line what Jack Roush wants to do.
We'll see that team in victory lane before, perhaps not this season, but certainly a coming season is done. Let's review that top 10 now and see how we've shuffled the deck with the problems for Waltrip and for Elliott. Rusty Wallace now rides alone up front, and Terry Labonte's move that we mentioned there during the shuffle has brought him to second spot ahead of Harry Gant. He'll be the next man in Gant's sights. Here's your second 5, Schrader, Marlin, Rudd, Allison, and Speed, and Darrell Waltrip is apparently out of his car. Let's go back to pit road.
Well, we're watching Darrell Waltrip. We were just ready to stick our microphone in, Dave Despain, and as normal, we decided to move the car at that point. It was blocking the entrance into the garage area, but I'm going to stick it in here now. Darrell's getting ready to fire the car again. They're trying still to get the stop leak into the car and try to see how bad the radiator problem is. Darrell, do you know exactly what it is, the problem?
Well, it's a water pump, we think. It got hot, and all of a sudden it just got hot. It didn't blow up. It just temperature pegged out. Now we got a water pump problem, looks like.
We'll let him keep working on that problem as Jeff Hammond's talking to him the whole time while they're trying to fix it up front there. But what does that mean, Gary Nelson? Can you fix that and get it back in the race?
Water pump is a pretty serious thing. It takes a long time to fix. It's more than a 5 or 10 minute job. I really think they need to look at the radiator just to make sure there's not a hole in the radiator. When all that stuff gets hot, you don't know where the water's coming from. The steam just goes everywhere. But if it is a water pump, it's going to be a lot harder to change than a radiator.
As we watch Wallace here, I find Waltrip's reaction to all that interesting. I have seen Darrell Waltrip on occasion when he had to roll that car in for that kind of work, and he didn't want a whole lot to do with pit reporters. Pat Patterson, nice work in getting in there to get the word from Darrell on their situation.
I was amazed how cool Darrell was with that. I mean, he just very nonchalant. Well, it happened to be not a water pump, but it was overheating to put us out at Le Mans after 16 and a half hours. And I'll tell you, it's a disappointing thing to go through, but I guess he's just a good veteran at that or something. I don't know.
Real tough break for Darrell, you know, leading in points going into Sears Point last week and having a transmission problem put him out, losing the point lead to Dale Earnhardt. Now struggling for second place in the points, having another problem here at Pocono. He's definitely going to fall farther back in the points race.
I had begun earlier at the time that problem occurred to talk a little bit about the championship and the fact that consistency is such an issue. Wallace is going on pit road, so we'll hold that story once again as the leader comes down pit road, and this should be pretty much routine. This is a scheduled stop, but Wallace will be the first of the front runners in. This is your lead car, the dominant car in this Miller High Life 500. Let's go to Pat Patterson.
Well, the crew is working on the right side of Rusty's car. Jimmy Maycar, the front tire changer there on the right-hand side. Barry Dodson jacking the car and he's down and away. But this would be a routine pit stop. 14.3 seconds for the leader, Rusty Wallace.
Clean and effective work there.
Oh, did you see that crew pounce on that car? The wheels hadn't stopped turning and they were taking them loose already and jacking it up. That is a well-orchestrated crew. They do very good on the pit stops. They've raced with Dale Earnhardt's crew. Earnhardt probably getting ready to make his pit stop along with the rest of the leaders. Terry Labonte was running second. Now Terry Labonte is the new leader until he makes his pit stop.
And the leader from 23rd starting spot, something we did not perhaps make enough of earlier. Labonte was not among the Fast 20 qualifiers on the first day and started this race from 23rd, but felt confident that they had found some speed in that final long practice session yesterday. After the rain, they gave him a couple of hours to work the cars yesterday, and Labonte was one of the guys who obviously found a lot of speed. Has come from 23rd now to lead the race here this afternoon, and an excellent run for Terry Labonte, who joins our list of leaders in the event thus far. I believe that is officially the 7th lead change of the day. Let's go back to the pits. Earnhardt is making his pit stop. Pat Patterson.
Very good stop he just made. Once again, we told you that Earnhardt's crew is the world's fastest pit crew, and this is where everything really comes together for that team. When they get opportunity, they seize it, and they take advantage of it. A good pit stop for Dale Earnhardt, as most of the leaders should be coming in the next few laps.
You know, besides being a critical element from a competition standpoint of making a good pit stop, I'll tell you from a driver confidence level and a momentum, you know, when you're really honking out there and you're really working and everything's grooving, and then you come in and that stop is absolutely flawless, it just adds to it. It's just fantastic.
The leader is on pit road now. Terry Labonte comes down pit road. He will probably surrender the lead again to Rusty Wallace unless that crew can perform a minor miracle. Two teams around which there has been much speculation, as we mentioned earlier. Labonte perhaps bound elsewhere, but for now, that crack Junior Johnson organization goes to work.
We can see the crew, the man in the front of the car, really clean the grill off. There's a screen across the front of the grill that will pick up rubber. The crew member ran over there and cleaned the grill off, hopefully to make the car run a little bit cooler. As you see Terry Labonte leaving the pits, maybe Rusty Wallace will regain the lead.
We'll watch him now as they come back out. Labonte returning to the combat here, having made that routine green. And now, of course, everybody starts to wonder, will the yellow flag situation come up and perhaps shuffle this deck as the front runners begin to come in under the green flag when the crews really feel that pressure. Waltrip's car has been pushed, or is being pushed at this moment, in fact, back into the garage area, perhaps for repairs, perhaps not. If they can fix it and get back out and run more laps, they probably will, because this championship that we will perhaps get to that story in a moment. Mark Martin now on pit road. This championship will be decided by a handful of points if the pattern of the last few years is to be followed, and every lap you can make on the racetrack can very well amount to points in your total at the end of the year. Harry Gant circulating now as your leader, has not made his pit stop. Second place car, Mark Martin on pit road at the moment. We'll expect all the front runners to be in momentarily. Martin back into battle after great service from that Roush team. Solid team. They've been running top 5 week after week, except for a problem last week, and in fact it was a problem in the pits. Confusion as they came in. question of whether it was going to be a fuel-only stop or a tire stop. They went to the tire. Martin left. They didn't get the lug nuts on. He lost the wheel and flipped the car and ended up upside down against the dirt embankment at Sears Point. He was uninjured, but that was their first real setback in the last half dozen races. This is an emerging team, and evidence that new teams, new organizations, new sponsors are coming into Winston Cup racing. This is only the second time this year that we have not had a full field for this race. We were 3 spots, so check that, 5 spots short at the tail end of the field. But the point, I think, is that the teams that are here are stronger, and this is really, I'll throw this out to either of you, really a very, very healthy form of motorsport that we're watching here today.
Well, absolutely. When you look at the top 20 cars, less than 0.8 of a second off of each other from a pace standpoint, you know, there's 15, 20 cars capable of winning every race coming in here, and I'm surprised that they were short as far as filling the field. Most of the time I hear about it is that they send people home. People don't make the qualifying cut. So it's probably the most respected competitive motorsports form in this country today.
That certainly is the typical situation, to have a full field. At the short tracks, it was a big source of discussion this year that with only 30 starting spots on the short track, that there would be heavily backed, highly bucked teams with a lot of sponsorship who would not make the cut and would have to go home. We saw it in Richmond when Richard Petty didn't make the cut. But Gary, I think the other side of this whole issue is that a new team that comes into this sport, the old days of the guy with the shoestring operation coming in and working his way up the ladder, that's hard to do. If you're going to come in, you got to come in like Jack Roush with a lot of talent, a lot of engineering, and mostly a lot of dollars.
It's a hornet's nest out there trying to get competitive. As we watch the leader, Harry Gant, who hasn't made his pit stop yet, waiting for him to make his pit stop. We'll have to see how far he can go on his gas mileage. But definitely, you have to have everything perfect, really, just to make most of the races nowadays. You know, at this race, if you just showed up with your race car, you could have made it by running a minimum speed. But in most cases, there's 50, 60 cars for a 40-car field, and it is tough to make it. It really gets to be a struggle. This might be, you know, the middle of the summer. Some of the guys have worn out their equipment. Some of the guys are back home gearing up for the second half. Like in our case, the reason Kyle Petty and our team isn't racing, as we look at the top 5 on the screen there, Harry Gant, Ken Schrader, and Lake Speed haven't made their pit stop. Sterling Marlin neither. Rusty Wallace, 5th place car already, but he's already made his pit stop. So as the rest make their stops, they'll climb back up, and Rusty Wallace could end up as the leader again.
You make a good point, Gary, regarding the strength of the teams. It's interesting to note that 3 teams have won 9 of the races this year. This is event 13. We've had 3 teams that have won 9 races, led by Darrell Waltrip. And as we watch Harry Gant, wonder if he's coming in, I'm finally going to get to make my point here about this championship battle, and that is that Darrell Waltrip won his previous 3 championships with a tremendous amount of consistency. This year, he's back in the thick of the point battle, and everybody seems to think that maybe here he comes on pit road. Let's, I'm not going to get that story in again this time, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to go to Dick Berggren right now. Dick?
Dave, Harry Gant has won here on one occasion and one occasion only. 1984, when he won that race, he crossed the start-finish line and ran out of gas. You'll note he's among the last of the leaders to pit. That means he's getting good fuel mileage. Getting this tank full right now, getting all 22 gallons in, is very, very important. And so is how far they can run before the next stop. This will not be the last one. Look how careful they're being. They're going to get every drop of gas in. There he goes, full tank of fuel. 16.5. Okay, now to take a little bit longer time to make sure you get all the fuel. 16.5 on that gas stop.
Tom Von Fonzie of New Jersey wants to know if the crews are limited to any certain amount of fuel during the day. The answer is no. The gas tank is limited to 22 gallons. They'll pack it as full as they can, and they can run as much gas through that car during the day as they feel they need to. Gary.
We had a viewer call in. His name is Bob Hurd from Youngstown, Ohio. What kind of gas mileage do the cars get? Now, this is a very good point at this part of the race. Harry Gant just went 100 miles. He stopped on lap 120 for fuel. That means 40 more laps will put him up to lap 160 for fuel. Add 40 more to that, and that's 200. That's if there's no more cautions. Harry Gant can make it to the finish. I don't think anybody else can. So Harry Gant really thinking 3 stops away. He can go 100 miles on his gas. There was 300 miles to go. He can make it.
Pocono Beach, or called in rather, and are selected. Okay.
Got a problem with Pat Patterson. We'll get back to Pat. We'll note that Mark Martin has come back on pit road, and that is not routine. He had just made his routine pit stop. He is back in again. I again marvel at the astuteness of Winston Cup crew chiefs, because I didn't notice that it was exactly 100 and 100 to the end of the race, but Gary Nelson gets paid to figure things like that out, and perhaps that'll be the thing that'll win the race here for Harry Gant. As we watch the action continue, Kenny Schrader ducking down, out of line, on pit road. Routine pit stops continue.
Yeah, I mistakenly said there was 300 miles to go. There's 200 miles to go in the race, but yeah, that's the way it's working out. Ken Schrader looks like he's making his pit stop, so he's got a little bit of a cushion, 2 laps later than Harry Gant. But the Rusty Wallace team, the Terry Labonte team, and several of the teams that stopped earlier are going to have one extra stop if there are no more cautions in the day.
I was going to forgive you your 300-mile error because you were able to pick up on the fact that Gant had indeed stretched that fuel to the point where it might win him the race. The shuffle continuing here as everybody makes those routine stops, and the first guy to pit in this pack, and who definitely would need one extra stop to make it to the end, is Rusty Wallace, trying to win one for Pontiac, a track that's been dominated in recent years by Ford and Chevrolet. So Wallace has brought his car in early, gotten his service. Harry Gant in late, and we'll sort out that running order for you after this round of pit stops is complete. And while that process is continuing, here is Lake Speed coming by start finish, and continuing his quest toward what he hopes will be a top 5 finish here today. Folks out there paying attention, from San Angelo, Texas, Jerry Martin calls in. He listened to the introduction of Lynn St. James at the top of the show, and he wonders, Lynn, what did you say to Doc Bundy after that big flaming 3-car smash up at Riverside, California, which Doc admitted that it was his fault?
I have to admit, I asked him maybe 20 times, 30 times. I kept yelling again, what were you thinking? Why did you do that? Just again and again. And he didn't have much to say at the time, but one of those driver, well, he did say he was sorry, but that was a little late and a little weak, and one of those driver decisions that just was a bad one.
Are you enemies for life with somebody who does something like that on the racetrack? It happens in every form of racing. Somebody comes in, makes a mistake, fouls up, drives you into the wall, in your case spectacularly. Does that affect your relationship thereafter?
It does, maybe for a little while, and it was kind of hard actually, because Doc had been a very good friend and a helper over the years with me, and as I was progressing through my career. And so it hurt more, I think, that it was somebody that I was really good friends with. It took about 3 months, I think, and then I didn't see him for maybe 3 months, and it was a little rough at the beginning and talking to him because I still wanted to slug him. But at the same time, you know, it's people are people, and people make mistakes, but you really have to feel about how you feel about somebody individually and not about something like, I know he didn't do it on purpose. I mean, you know.
We're glad you both came out of it in good shape and remain friends. We're watching Lake Speed lead the race, anticipating that he will probably pit this time. Question, speaking of crashing, is Mike Alexander still recovering from injuries, and will he be back? It relates to the Bobby Allison story that has played throughout the day here. Bobby Allison was injured. Mike Alexander was named as his replacement. Earlier this year in a short track in Florida, Mike crashed and suffered a head injury. His recovery is coming along, but slowly. He will get back in a race car and stay win. Lake Speed, the leader, is on pit road. Let's go to Dick Berggren.
They are all smiles in Lake Speed's pit. This is about as well as they have run all year. They've got a legitimate shot to win this thing. They know that. They're not going to change this car at all. They're not going to change the wedge. They're not going to change the stagger. They're going to give it 2 tires on the right side. Clock is ticking away. They're too going to be very, very sure they get all the fuel in it. These guys are very good at the fuel game. Fuel's all in, and there goes Lake Speed. 22.5. 17.5. Let's chase that at 17.5. Much better than 22.5.
Lake Speed thunders back into the competition as a long green flag run here has brought all of the front runners in for fuel and given the pit crews an opportunity to strut their stuff and show their muscle, which documents the fact that Alan Kulwicki has returned to this competition after extensive repairs, a broken flywheel that they had to go back in and do a lot of work to get him running again. Rusty Wallace marching his way right back to the top of the order here. Pitted early, you'll recall, very early indeed. First of the pack to come in. He was running up front. He brought it on pit road, fell back outside the top 10, worked his way steadily back up as everyone else made their stops, and he has now returned to the lead. But perhaps the key issue is fuel. He would need an extra stop because of that early stop here at Pocono if we remain green. Very unlikely, I think, that we could go all the way from here under green, although on one occasion this 167 laps under green. They only had one caution that day, and if that happens from this juncture on, Rusty Wallace is going to have some interesting decisions to make.
Well, Rusty Wallace being the leader, he's got about a 6-second lead over the second-place car, the number 11 car of Terry Labonte, who then has a fairly good-sized lead over Harry Gant, the third-place car, and then Dale Earnhardt is back there in fourth. So they've strung out just a little bit. Still plenty of racing left to do. You know, what is it, lap 128 right now. So these guys are starting to set up for the finish. They're trying to think about, now Rusty Wallace saying, we got an extra stop. Terry Labonte saying, we got an extra stop if this goes green. Maybe it'd be a good time for me to stretch it out and get enough of a lead where I can come in for a splash of gas and still keep the lead. So Rusty Wallace needs to be thinking about those things right now and not lose any time with lap traffic. Like he's pulling up on the 57 car of Hut Strickland. He needs to get on by and get out as far as he can, just in case there's no cautions.
You know, I was wondering if maybe now that he's got a little bit of a cushion, doesn't have Darrell chasing him and all that, that he might just sort of ease off a little, and particularly with his fuel thing. But I just clocked him and he had a 59 flat, so he's running the same exact hot pace that he needs to, you know. But you sometimes wonder, oh, well, I don't have anybody chasing me, and maybe it's time to maybe conserve a fuel a little bit, you know. But if it's set up and it's, you know, if it is eating that fuel, needing that fuel to turn that pace, then he's going to have to build that lead, as you said, so he can cushion that time that he can jump in and jump out.
Right, he stopped maybe 10 laps earlier than Harry Gant, Lake Speed, and a couple of the others, so he, I'm sure, won't be able to go to the finish on the fuel. He would have to go a long ways on. So Rusty Wallace, his only hope is to get enough of a lead if there's no cautions. You know, nobody can predict it. That's what's so good about NASCAR racing. Nobody knows what's around the next turn for Rusty Wallace. Here he is going into turn one. Is there going to be another caution, or am I going to have to make an extra pit stop and possibly lose the lead unless I can go fast enough to get a big enough lead where I can stop and still retain the lead?
That, of course, is tough to do. 17 lead changes among 9 drivers today. There were 17 among 7 here a year ago. Interesting story from pit road about the...
Just hoping that engine will stay together.
Well, Earnhardt's Lumina is at the head of the class, ahead of the Ford and the Pontiac. It's a 3-car battle up front, and that's been the meat and potatoes of Winston Cup stock car racing during the years. Wallace falling off the pace, sliding wide, and does he have a problem? He does indeed. Flat front tire for Rusty Wallace. The Pocono plague, debris on the racetrack, and Wallace has fallen victim to it as Rusty Wallace, the dominant force in this race, watches the field come streaming by and will have to limp to pit road. And is the heat on now for the Kodiak crew? Wallace absolutely dominant in this race. Only in the last round of green has anybody been able to come up and seriously challenge his dominance, but now the tire is flat and Wallace is limping, and there you saw the damage. The tire, the inner liner blew, and it has done tremendous damage to the front, just as you said that it could on the earlier incident with the 52 of Jimmy Means.
That's what we were worried about earlier today with the 52 car with a flat tire. Rusty Wallace just tore his whole fender off, probably tore up the oil cooler, and it's running on the rim right now. It's going to be a very, very costly flat tire for Rusty Wallace after running so strong.
He just didn't slow down. You know, he was really, I think, just trying to carry too much speed, and he had a long way to go, but he just didn't slow down enough.
That was exactly my question. In that situation with a blown tire running on the inner liner, can you slow down and make it live, or are you just as well off to gas it and hope that it holds?
You just cross your fingers. You know, Rusty was doing his best judgment. He knows the risk if he goes too fast, but he also knows he's going to lose the race if he doesn't go fast enough. So he's here to win. He doesn't know what he can do about it, but I don't know what they're going to do now.
You heard the cheer in the background, and I think it's only fair to note that this is a cheer you would not have heard perhaps a month, 6 weeks ago. The crowd cheering the misfortune for Rusty Wallace. This a result of his recent unpopularity after that controversial incident at Charlotte. Rusty is going to have to live that down, battle for the lead, and it's Terry Labonte on the inside, Dale Earnhardt on the outside. The Ford has the advantage here at Pocono. They dipped below the line. The caution flag has come out, and apparently the Wallace incident has dropped oil on the racetrack. Huge crowd cheering now. The battle up front. They are racing back to the flag. NASCAR rules, yellow flag marks the end of the lap, and they race back to that yellow, and Earnhardt comes back underneath.
Now, oil is in the third turn. Rusty Wallace Wallace's oil cooler came apart, and they're over the second turn now. They're heading for that oil, and they're still racing for the flag. Earnhardt and his crew have to be very careful right here. I hope his spotter let him know about the oil on the track.
The radios, of course, now become critical. The spotters know where the oil is, but they don't know exactly where it is. They've got to warn the guys that there's a problem ahead, and Labonte has elected the more cautious approach here, perhaps confident that he can pass Earnhardt again. He will let Earnhardt lead past the yellow flag at the end of lap 162. Dale Earnhardt will remain the leader of this Miller High Life 400. Terry Labonte will fall to second place. And we're going to eavesdrop on NASCAR as the cleanup work begins here.
All the way down between turn 2 and turn 3. 4 caution car. Leader's coming up on you, Wayne. Just stay at the bottom and go through the shortcut in turn 2 and let the field go by you, and I'll put you out up on the racetrack.
This communication from NASCAR to the cleanup crew.
There you go, Wayne. Just let the field go by you on the shortcut. Caution car, the leader is going into the tunnel turn to be the 3.
Communication also here with the pace car to get the pace car safely onto the racetrack and pick up the field.
Wayne, the last car to go by you will be the 9. Best I can tell, it'll be the 9. If you can come on out after him and hit it going into 3 and follow down the 3 into the pit road.
They're talking to the driver of the safety truck there. Wayne must be the one that puts the cat litter
He's
down on the
about 3 feet off the grass. That's where it appears to be, Wayne, and you ought to be on it.
They're advising him where the oil is. This is the driver of the cleanup truck. Leaders are now on pit road. The pits are open as Earnhardt comes in to stop. His pit is short of Labonte's, and so you saw Labonte go streaking by. They will race back out of the exit of the pit. Earnhardt will get in there first, his pit being further up the road. And the Shelmerdine-led Goodwrench crew going to work. There is your split as we see the 2 leaders, the first and second place cars. Labonte was the second car to stop as he had to go all the way to the end of the pit road. In theory, Earnhardt should come off the jack first, and then the race will be on. Here is Earnhardt off the jack and on the gas, and here is Labonte, and he comes streaking out, and you'll see it happen coming down pit road, and Labonte is going to win that race as he will beat Dale Earnhardt out of the pits. There is a car rolling to a stop, and I believe that's Morgan Shepherd. Just they're actually slow getting up to speed, but the key issue here is Labonte, who was able to get in, get his service, and take the advantage and win it. We mentioned the cheer at Rusty Wallace misfortune. Here is the visual evidence of that misfortune. For a report, let's go to Dick Berggren.
David, this car is an absolute mess. The oil cooler appears to be okay. There's a couple of dings in it, but it had a piece of screen in front of it, and it doesn't look for sure like it's leaking. But where the oil smoke came from, and this whole car is just covered with oil, was the tire blew so badly it wiped out the oil lines. Those stainless steel braided oil lines are all chewed up. They've had to snake an oil line from the oil cooler all the way back into the trunk of the car where the oil tank is kept. Several other oil lines have also been installed. Rusty even has been working on snaking lines inside the cockpit of the car. They got the hood back on. They're going to try to fire this motor and send it back off again and see if they can start this thing. They can.
Again, get this car fixed any way you can. Get it taped or cut or beat back into shape. Get it back out on the racetrack in 2 laps. Rusty Wallace has been one of the most popular newcomers to Winston Cup racing. That popularity has certainly suffered a great deal since Memorial Day weekend at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Wallace was a big fan favorite who nearly won the '88 championship, but then a month ago he and Darrell Waltrip tangled on the last lap of the Winston, and the cheers turned to boos. Waltrip went through a similar experience 10 years ago. He's used to it, and like Darrell, Rusty is learning to live with it.
I just never have been what they consider a dirty driver. It was just a situation where I'm racing Darrell Waltrip, and I got myself in a position where, hey, I didn't mean for it to happen what happened. It happened. It's over, and I can't do anything about it. It's not nothing intentional, but there's a lot of fans out there who just don't believe that. But I was in the car, and I know what happened, and what happened was a hard drive that came out sour for another driver, and I'm sorry about that happened to him.
Motivation is crucial to the success of any racer. And for Wallace, the cheers of the fans and a lot of support from a good race team are critical to that motivation. It's still there.
I think the things that charge me are how the fans feel about me, the rooting behind me. Go get him, Rusty. You can do it. You're our guy. The crew, you're a driving son of a gun. That type of stuff, the pumping up type of stuff, the stuff every driver likes out of their team and fans to help you with.
The post-Winston controversy and rumors that he'll jump ship next year might have left Wallace's team in a shambles. Instead, they're better than ever.
Just nobody giving up. Everybody's sticking together through all the rumors and all the stuff that's everybody's trying to tear us apart. We're just sticking together and driving hard, and they're working hard. The cars are prepared excellent. We just got to keep this type of drive up to win this title.
As Rusty Wallace comes back on pit road for additional repair, we see the determination of this team, and I think we saw throughout this race just how good they are. They totally dominated here this afternoon. We're preparing for the restart after the Wallace episode. We'll get a look at the top 5 as they've sorted themselves out for that restart. Lynn, it's just no fun for a driver to be booed, whatever the reason. It's got to be hard. You're looking at Neil Bonnet's up in front. Lynn.
Well, it is, but at the same time, you know, you're driving to race and to win, and it's a team thing, and you're all involved in that. And even though I respect what the fans feel, and that does sort of have an effect on you, I mean, these things happen. I just watched that tape. How many times have we all seen it? And it didn't look like a blatant issue. And I mean, you look at what happened in Indy between Al Jr. and Emerson Fittipaldi. You know, it's what racing in a way is all about, and the fans are important, but I think at the same time, you know, you got to live with yourself and with what you do, and that would look like a genuine feeling from Rusty. And I mean, when you saw Rusty and Darrell run in the first part of this race, fender to fender, close on, I mean, they're driving each race doing the best they can, and it wasn't dirty driving.
Coming back for a restart here of this Miller High Life 400. No, Pat Patterson did not join Bobby Allison on the early flight out of here. He has an equipment problem that we'll get sorted out and get him back into the loop here momentarily. But right now, we come thundering down for the green flag after the 3 laps of caution, and they don't get quite as frisky up that front straightaway this time by. They go peeling off into the first turn, and Neil Bonnet will try to hang on to the lead that has come his way as a result of this caution situation. And Bonnet would certainly like to win this one today for Bobby Allison. It's the first time he's been able to get to the front of the field. Did it with the help of the caution flag. I'd offer one more observation on that whole issue of the fans. By golly, it's half the fun to come here and root for the guy you love or boo the guy you love to hate. And the fact that those incidents happen under such incredible public scrutiny now, with so much television coverage of this event, with these guys being so much public figures, when you have an incident like that, you can guarantee that you're going to have to pay a penalty for it. Ask Darrell Waltrip. He had a couple of bumps like that back 15 years ago, and he's been booed ever since. You learn to live with it. You learn to grin about it. And that's the last need to be said about that, because we're back to some pretty fascinating racing here as they hammer up the front straightaway, trying to sort out who indeed is going to lead and win this race. I'd watch that Budweiser color back there. If he can find his way through the field, bet that Terry Labonte is going to be trying to get back to the front. He got boxed in traffic right there. Not a whole lot of places to go, and not a time when you want to take a lot of risks when you're running with guys you haven't seen all day, Gary.
Right, this is a whole different mix of traffic here. Dale Jarrett there right on the outside of Terry Labonte. Neil Bonnet up in front of him. Labonte's been running with Rusty and Darrell and that group all day. Now he's in a whole different pack. And here comes Dale Earnhardt really shooting to the inside under these cars. These guys are going to have to really be careful now. There's not a lot of laps left to the finish, and they really want their cars to be in good shape for the finish. At the same time, as you see Terry Labonte go on the inside of that car of Dale Jarrett's, they're going towards the front. Terry Labonte wants to take the lead back.
But he wants to pick his spot and do it carefully, and he did. He worked his way by Jarrett. Jarrett is in the lead lap now, the second place car. Neil Bonnet, checked out the third place car, I believe, as Neil Bonnet continues to show as the race leader, and Earnhardt is the other man stomping his way to the front. Now, perhaps some of these cars we haven't seen up front indeed have the strength to stay there, or perhaps indeed they will suffer the consequence that we've seen throughout the day, and that is the strength of the cars like Terry Labonte and Dale Earnhardt, and now the absent Rusty Wallace. It's fun to get up there at the front, but you got to have the staying power to stay there, and perhaps we can get more on Terry Labonte's strength right now as we go back to pit road and Dick Berggren.
Brewer, how strong is that car? Have you got enough muscle to win this thing?
Well, the thing's pretty strong right now. Of course, you know, we learned a long time ago, don't count your chickens before they're hatched, but it looks awful good, you know. The thing's run strong all day, and, you
it's the same car we had in Dover, Delaware, and we didn't have it quite like we wanted it, and took it back to the shop, and the guys made some adjustments on it. So right now, Dick looks awful strong, but I wouldn't say neither way.
Singing on tune, they hope it's going to happen, but they don't want to jinx themselves by saying, yeah, it's our day, until after the checkered flag.
As Terry Labonte works his way around the racetrack, Tim Brewer is the essence of the calm, cool, and collected crew chief. And look at the traffic jam here as we watch from our in-car camera. Davey Allison in a great tussle there with Ricky Rudd. You saw Davey get real sideways. And again, Dick Trickle finds himself close to the action all afternoon long with pictures from the Miller race team.
Well, you can see the traffic issue, but also that low line is the line you got to be in. You may play up high, you may do some things to try to make some moves, but you've got to be in that low groove, and everybody fought for it. I mean, Ricky Rudd was trying to stay down there, and you have to fight for that low groove.
The strong cars throughout the day trying to assert themselves now in the late laps. Rusty Wallace is back on pit road. 163 are down. 200 laps will be the distance here this afternoon. And some guys we've not seen much of today get their opportunity to run at the head of the field. But for the moment, they chase Terry Labonte. Earnhardt has now emerged as second. Gant has come to third, and the 25 car working its way back up front. Kenny Schrader's been up and down the ladder today, but he is currently fourth. Gary?
You might have gotten a glimpse of the 15 car just ahead of Terry Labonte. That's Brett Bodine. He's running in the 10th position, just that much from being a lap down. He's trying to unlap himself. He's doing a pretty good job. Brett Bodine's car looks like it's running strong enough to hold Terry Labonte off. If he could get a caution, he could regain his lap, but he is the 10th place car. So here is the leader, Terry Labonte, and the rest of the field trying to catch him.
We appreciate the interest of all the fans who have come to us from other disciplines today on this exclusive SET live and uninterrupted by commercial telecast of the Miller 500. We obviously have an IndyCar fan in Queens, New York, and Michael, I hope you do your name justice. Michael Kozluzny wonders if the new rule that all 4 tires cannot be below the white line is not being enforced here today. Why are the cars able to run down below the white line? Well, obviously that's an IndyCar rule, Mike, and it's a little different form of racing, and frankly the stock car guys don't care a whole lot about how the IndyCar guys do it. That was a rule in the Indy 500 and does not apply here today. Alan Kulwicki, the track record holder on this racetrack, has been black flagged. That car smoking. A drivetrain problem earlier, a broken flywheel. They repaired it. He will go behind the wall once again.
Back to that white line issue, it didn't work at Indy very well either, because by the time of the race, everybody was down there and they didn't even pay any attention to it.
Well, didn't make any difference there. The IndyCar is running in Detroit today, where Michael Andretti started from the pole. Alonso Jr. second. Emerson Fittipaldi lined up third. Yesterday in the Trans Am, it was a Chevy sweep. Greg Pickett winning from Willie T. Ribbs and Tommy Kendall. And the McLarens are first and second in qualifying for the Canadian Grand Prix. The bike fans have apparently tuned in today. Somebody wants to ask Dave Despain if he'll keep announcing motorcycle races or just do stock cars from now on. And the answer is I'm going to do as much of both as possible. Lynn St. James tells us she'd love to race stock cars. Here's your second place battle on the racetrack. Gary Nelson, the only guy left that we know. Bergeron's going to keep doing the stock car magazine for that guy down in Florida. You're going to come back and run at Pocono in, what, 6 weeks or so?
Yes, sir. I make my living in the pit area, but I do this because I really enjoy it. Watching this kind of racing from this vantage point is really educational for me as far as what goes on. Seeing this kind of action firsthand and watching Dale Earnhardt, Harry Gant, and Ken Schrader racing for second position like they are this late in a 500-mile race, it is just, you know, I'm a race fan, and I think anybody watching has to really admire these guys. They are really driving. I don't have any intentions of being a race car driver. I like working in the pit, and I like working upstairs here. This is a lot of fun watching this type of racing.
Well, it's certainly been a fascinating show all day today. Like the racetrack, which offers so much variety, this race has had a tremendous amount of variety in it. The pace of the race has been so different during the day. Here's Harry Gant, old fuel mileage Harry, proving he can drive that race car. He's got the handle as well, all 4 wheels below the white line, as he passes Dale Earnhardt, who now has Kenny Schrader in tow. 3-car battle and a good one going on for second, third, and fourth. But Wallace, who was the dominant car, has gone into deep serious trouble. Now Earnhardt seems to be backing up because an easy pass, or a seemingly easy pass there for Kenny Schrader. Looked like Earnhardt may be able to stick up front for a while, but now has given up 2 spots within a lap. He falls back to 4th. He'll come back and attack in the battle of the Chevy Luminas going side by side here, but Earnhardt does not appear to have the strength he had. With the Wallace problem, it was Terry Labonte's Ford that emerged as the strong car here at Pocono. We had intermittent yellows early, then we had a long yellow after Jeff Bodine knocked down the first turn wall. Jeff without injury, then a long stretch of green. Now through it all as we get down to show and tell time, as they say in this business. A little more than 25 laps away, 100 miles from the finish, 125 miles from the finish. We watch Terry Labonte and wonder if anybody's got the stuff to go up there and deal with that Junior Johnson Ford. Great show here at Pocono.
Oh, look at Ken Schrader. He is fighting. Dale Earnhardt, too, both sliding off the turn. They're racing very hard right now for position. There's some hand signals from Ken Schrader. I don't know what kind of sign language that was, but he was giving a signal to Dale Earnhardt.
I would imagine that he was, because he had to change his line dramatically to hold off there.
You know what I think it is when the cars get close, the air, they're getting the dirty air, and it really upsets the front car more than the car behind. And I think Schrader was trying to say, if you're going to follow me, how about staying just a little bit farther back, Dale, because it's upsetting my car and making me slide out towards the wall. Let's see if he gets another hand signal here. Well, Dale Earnhardt just said, I'm not going to follow you. I'm going to go on. No, it's right back behind him again. Maybe Schrader's saying, let's hook up in a draft and let's see if we can run down the front car. So I don't know. It's really interesting to see what goes on here.
Folks out there paying attention, Joe Liberti calls in and says, hey, if the points are given at 5-point intervals as you guys announced, then how can the actual point total you showed on the screen end in any number other than 0 or 5? Joe asks a good question. Actually, the 5-point interval extends back down through the top, half dozen or so spots. I'll go ahead and give you the accurate number: 175, 170, 165, 160, 155, and 150. It is a 5-point increment from 1st down to 6th. And then it's 4 points between 6th and 7th, 4 points of position down through 11th, and then it's 3 points between positions further back in the field. So we were not completely accurate all the way back through the field. A good catch for Joe Liberti. Glad to have you watching from Trumbull, Connecticut. And thanks for catching the announcers in an obvious error here today.
We were just trying to make it simple. Well, Terry Labonte got around Brett Bodine, putting him a lap down. That makes 9 cars on the lead lap now. Brett Bodine was really fighting for his life there, trying to stay ahead of Terry Labonte. He showed a lot of strength to be able to do that, but he just couldn't hold him off.
Getting down close to the end of this race here, we thank you for all these calls, and I mean hundreds and hundreds of calls. I know some of you have been frustrated, unable to get through today. The 800 lines have been jammed. And boy, we appreciate that. That shows the enthusiasm of stock car fans. I think, to be quite honest with you, with 25 laps to go here, probably not a lot of point in calling in. We're going to get just as many of these questions in as we can before the end of the race here today. The lines have been closed because we simply have more calls than we could possibly deal with here this afternoon. So we appreciate everyone calling in. We certainly hope you've enjoyed this opportunity to get your questions answered here on television. We'll check that top 10 at the end of 175 of 200. We are at we're nearing the end of this race here, coming down now with just 25 laps to go. Labonte, Gant, Schrader, Earnhardt, and Marlin, your top 5. And Marlin has emerged as a power here in the late laps. Speed, Shepard, Bonnet, Pearson, and Brett Bodine rounding out the top 10 here. Gary, a question as we watch Labonte.
Well, we have a question from Ron Van Halen from New York City. Can you give us some specific information on the car's engines, like water pressure and engine RPMs? Well, we covered the engine RPM one pretty good, and the water pressure is something you got to have, as we saw when Darrell Waltrip lost his water pressure. He went behind the wall. But the water pressure is something we don't monitor. Fuel pressure might be about 6 pounds. Oil pressure about 80 pounds. I don't know, the oil temperature would be about 230 degrees, and the water temperature hopefully is around 200 degrees. So thank you very much for calling in.
He memorizes all that stuff. Labonte dominant in the late laps here. Can he just romp and stomp all the way down to the finish? Well, let's see. We'll take a look at the interval the next time they're down that front straightaway and see if old Harry Gant's going to be able to do anything with the leader, Labonte, or if this is going to be a free ride for Terry. Gary Koski of St. Louis wonders if is it ever intentional when one driver knocks another driver off the track? What is the penalty? The answer to that is absolutely not. It is never, ever anybody's fault when one driver knocks another driver off the racetrack. I mean, it's a judgment call.
I'm glad you answered that.
Pardon me?
I'm glad you answered that.
I didn't want to put you on the spot. It's an interesting issue, and it's been an issue here now for the last 2 or 3 years. Dale Earnhardt very much involved in that with Jeff Bodine. Last year at Charlotte, the penalty, let's watch that interval now, then we'll get back to that penalty. Here is Terry Labonte moving by. And that, of course, is not Harry Gant. That is number 15, but running right ahead of him is the Gant car as we check that interval back from first to second. Is it ever intentional? Well, perhaps sometimes. And what is the penalty? NASCAR's call. First of all, if they think it's intentional, and if they think it's intentional, it's up to them, their discretion, what penalty they will impose. And in a very unusual move at Charlotte a year ago, they pulled Dale Earnhardt onto the off the racetrack and onto pit road. Bodine's penalty had already been imposed because he was crashed out of the race, and they put Earnhardt on pit road for 5 laps and said, you just can't do that. But the point there, I think, is that that was a feud that had been going on a while. Those guys had been belting each other around pretty good. NASCAR said, we got to step in now and take some strong action and calm this down. What NASCAR does more often than impose penalties, they have new encounter sessions among the drivers. After a couple of guys bump on the racetrack, they'll likely let it go that day. Then on Monday, they invite them on down to Daytona Beach, and they all go out to dinner together. And I have no idea what goes on in those discussions, but perhaps Gary Nelson could shed light on that.
Well, I'm sure you remember when you were in grade school, Dave, and you got called to the principal's office and got your wrist slapped. Well, it's pretty much the same thing. That, you know, when drivers are having an on-the-track feud or a difference of opinion, let's say, the best thing for them to do is to talk to each other, and NASCAR understands that, and they get them together. Look at Harry Gant gaining on Terry Labonte as we talk about this. You know, what they do is they get them together and they say, let's talk this out. Let's not drive it out on the racetrack. It's a whole lot safer and a lot less expensive to come to Daytona, go to the principal's office, and discuss this problem.
Lynn, you answered the question earlier about your relationship with Doc Bundy after the hit, but in all honesty, do you honestly feel that sometimes guys will knock other drivers out of the way?
Sure.
Yeah, it's part of the game. Should there be a penalty?
Yeah.
And what should the penalty be?
Probably as it is, a discretionary thing, because if you announced it what it is ahead of time, and I mean everybody would calculate it out or whatever, I just think that in a way it's fair that it is a discretionary thing by the sanctioning body, because everyone's going to be a little different deal, and so I think it's probably as it should be.
If I knock you off the racetrack in a $200,000 race, are you going to file that one away somewhere and come back someday and knock me off the racetrack before you'll consider it even?
No, I don't think it's when that happens on the track. I mean, it does. I mean, we'd like to say that it never is intentional, but it does happen. But I don't think it's a scorekeeping system. You know, you knock me once, I knock you once. It's a case of that it happens, and it's dealt with by the sanctioning bodies, and sometimes it's dealt with even in the paddock or something, you know.
It's not always handled with the most amount of love, but the principal, of course, steps in whenever necessary to keep things under control. A more technical question from Linda Bird in Shreveport, Louisiana. Do all the race cars have the same engine? Gary, we know the answer to that one.
Well, obviously the Fords run a Ford engine, but all of the rest of the cars on the track run a Chevrolet block. Even though there's Oldsmobiles and Buicks and Pontiacs on the racetrack, they run the Chevrolet 350 cubic inch engine block. They have Pontiac heads on the Pontiacs. They have Buick heads on the Buicks, but the basic engine is the same format on all the General Motors cars. The Ford cars have their own engine. As we watch Dale Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace racing along there, Rusty's back up to speed. Even with all of his problems, he's really hanging in there pretty good just to collect those points, but he really, it's a shame for him to fall back so far. I took an interval on the leaders between Terry Labonte and Harry Gant, and Harry Gant is definitely closing just ever so slightly on Terry Labonte.
He's got to hustle. He's got 19 laps left. Meanwhile, a complaint from Dale Earnhardt in the car number 3. He has called in a complaint that Rusty Wallace, many laps down now, has been shadowing his rear bumper with the effect of getting Earnhardt loose in the corners. Again, the effect of aerodynamics. Rusty with a bent-up race car, a lot of dirty air coming off that car. He gets up behind Earnhardt's rear bumper. That gets Earnhardt's car loose. Earnhardt is not able to catch up with the leaders. Earnhardt calls in his gripe, and again, through the politics of racing, Rusty backs off a little bit. We've got a crash. The car 63 into the wall. Problems here late in the race for Randy LaJoie. The New England campaigner has smacked it, and that will, in all likelihood, bring out the yellow. The NASCAR rule is not necessarily a yellow with every spin, but in this case, the car stopped up against the wall. Certainly a dangerous condition, and we will see a yellow flag for Randy LaJoie, setting up a sprint to the finish here with 18 to go.
If this were the old rule where they didn't close off pit road, all the leaders would be diving into the pits now. Instead, they're going to have to stay on the track, pick the yellow flag, and wait for the pace car. This car that we're looking at, 63, is in the first turn. Leader just now getting the yellow flag at the start-finish line, so the leaders are approaching turn 1. They'll have to go on up to turn 2 before they can catch the pace car. That is going to set up one heck of a finish, folks. Don't go away.
They have raced back to the yellow. It was no race at all. Of course, Labonte had a couple of seconds on Harry Gant. Gant made no effort to close that up, knowing that the yellow would do that for him. Once the pace car picks up the field, the pit road will then be open. They will all come in for what will likely be their final service here on lap 183, and we'll be looking at something like a 15-lap shootout over a 2.5-mile triangle at Pocono that's going to have a sellout crowd on their feet here this afternoon. It's just a perfect finish for what has been a spectacular afternoon of racing at Pocono. Randy LaJoie being tended to now by the safety personnel. Didn't look like it was a terribly hard hit. The car is not badly damaged, and I would suspect that Randy is okay. We see him moving around in the car as the crews move up to get the racetrack cleared just as quickly as possible and give us the maximum number of laps remaining. Question now, what kind of stop these guys are waiting for? All the remaining cars in the field will be on pit road for what, Gary?
Well, I'm sure they're going to put their best set that they've been saving for the end on the car right now. Hopefully they, there was a caution not too long ago. Maybe they put their best set on then. This may be their second best set. But in any case, they've got to put on 4 tires. There won't be any fuel going in unless they just think that it's marginal. Let's see a split screen here of the first and second place cars.
And we'll follow the leader toward his pit. Terry Labonte at the top of your screen. Let's go to Dick Berggren.
Well, Gary, these are going to be the best sets. They're untested sets. Both Labonte and Gant are going with sticker tires. Those are brand new tires that have never been on a race car, and they will change size. So these guys have got their fingers crossed that when they change sizes, that they're going to be okay. Gant is on the left side tires now. Labonte also on the left side. Gant ahead just by a tad, a tiny tad. Labonte ready to go. Labonte gets out first. Second is
there they go, charging down pit road.
Earnhardt's going to get out third, and Schrader still hasn't crossed in front of us. So that was the key. Who got out first, and Terry Labonte was the guy who did the job.
Labonte charging back out front. The rules about entering the pits have changed. The rules about exiting the pit have not. The first guy off pit road becomes the leader, and Terry Labonte has won that race back onto the racetrack. Harry Gant falling back to third spot now because Earnhardt's crew, as usual, got him in, got him out quickly, and he's moved up into second spot. Lynn.
This change in the rules, I think, has really had, a big impact, particularly from a driver's standpoint. They talked about the strategy earlier of diving into the pits, but when you look at all of the cars stopping at one time like they are, and you see all of those crews standing out there from a driver's standpoint, finding out where your crew is, because they're all now stopping at one time as opposed to before where they used to kind of dive in, and be able to get an advantage. So really looking at all those cars coming 5 abreast down pit lane and finding their pit, it's just incredible.
Tough to find the service station in that kind of traffic, Gary.
Very tough for the drivers. In fact, I've talked to a lot of the race drivers who look for a landmark on the other side of pit road, maybe a sign or a billboard or something, and they'll know when I get near that billboard, my pit's right across from it, because I have a very hard time, or the drivers have a very hard time seeing that man holding up that little 3-foot by 3-foot sign with the car number on it.
And when there are 40 of them out there all at once, it gets doubly difficult. And here at Pocono, we have the luxury of a big, wide pit road where there's lots of room to operate. It's going to be interesting at some of the other racetracks where they don't have that luxury. It's going to be a real traffic jam. So that's a rule that we'll have to see what the final word. History will judge that rule, as they say. The pace car lights continue to flash left side of your screen as more of the cars, the second wave, come on pit road, or in some cases, perhaps, drivers coming in for a second stop.
I remember telling my crew to wear a different color shirt, you know, so that they have something like that to designate it.
Anything to make them stand out, certainly.
You can see from this shot, one man with a sign just stopping that car. He's got a sign on a long pole. That makes him like he's taller. He holds it up higher, and maybe it'll stand above the other signs where the other crewmen hold just a chalkboard up with two hands. So there's a lot of different things you do, but the main thing is just to make it visible to the driver as best you can. You have your spotter also talking to the driver as he comes in. If the driver, I've had a lot of drivers say that I can't see the pit, I can't see the pit, and the spotter will say it's a little bit farther down, about 15 pits, about 10 pits, 5 pits, and that really helps the driver a lot. So a lot of chatter goes on over the radio.
Second group isn't too bad, it seems like. It's that first group, you know, that comes in right after they make the pit lane green.
Obvious pleasure with the pit stop activity here in the Labonte crew. The smiles indicating that they may think they've got the stuff here to the end. The Earnhardt crew, which has struggled all day to get as good as they can be, have now run it down to 15 laps to go, and they're going to have to step up and take their shot. Larry Pearson emerges here as the leader of the race. Labonte has been the strong car in the late running. Gant moving up into that second spot. We'll double check on that because I think Earnhardt got in there. No, they have moved Harry in front of Earnhardt now, so Earnhardt will be third, and the question will be if these three guys can come roaring past Larry Pearson, or if this Rookie of the Year challenger and son of David Pearson can hold these guys off. And I've heard a report here through our rather intricate eavesdropping situation that Larry Pearson might try to go ahead and stay out and make it on fuel. He was out of sync on his pit stops. He might gamble and go to the end, and why not, Gary? I mean, he's got nothing to lose.
Well, it's definitely nothing to lose. He's up front right now, but you know, it's going to be hard for him to maintain that with everybody else with the fresh tires and maybe the minor adjustments they made for the finish. They might have loosened their cars up. The top cars might have been, if they were a little bit on the safe side, they might have taken that cushion away and said, okay, we're going to make you just a little bit looser. Say the third, fourth, fifth place cars, they might have made some chassis adjustments, trying to get that little bit out that they've been missing as we watch them come for the green now.
Turning for what will probably be the final restart of the afternoon. 14 laps remain of 200 here at Pocono as they take the green. The remains of this field come hammering down the front straightaway, and Pearson hanging on. They're diving and darting all over the field.
That's Rusty Wallace right down on the inside. I mean, just even though he's got all those laps down.
Ever the racer, the leader of the race. Pearson goes high, loses traction, slides way wide. It makes it easy for Terry Labonte. Tires the issue there. The stickers hung onto the racetrack. Pearson didn't at all. He drops way back into the field. Labonte is the leader. Gant will be second. And we're going to get another look at that episode here as the race leader, who elected not to pit, takes a gamble and stay out onto the racetrack. Watch what happens to the lead car. Brett Bodine coming on the outside, and Pearson just slides wide and almost got a piece of Bodine. And you see how wide he went, and as a consequence, how many cars went under him. There was just no hope there, but what the heck, the guy stood up and took his shot. So Labonte emerges as the leader. Gant has him in his sights. Earnhardt lurking back there in third and trying to set up for the run to the finish. Dick Berggren, your thoughts?
Well, Dave Despain, as competitive as this sport is, I'm amazed at the strand of cooperation we're seeing here on pit road. As you know, there's a tire shortage, not quite enough tires. Terry Labonte's crew has just borrowed some tires to finish this race up from Bill Elliott's crew. Now, that sounds like no big deal, except for the fact that Labonte's team is sponsored by Budweiser, Elliott's team is sponsored by Coors. These guys really do cooperate with each other.
Well, it's also 4 teams. I'm sorry, there are 4 teams that are sticking together.
A lot of fraternity among those pit crews. They all have the same job. They all do the same work. They all pull together. And, of course, they've had their share of incidents down here this year. The fire in the Richard Petty pit in Atlanta earlier this year, very fresh in everyone's mind. And they do, in fact, pull together. They never want to see one of their brethren injured out there. And likewise, that fraternity among the drivers. We've talked a lot about them beating on each other and getting out there and mixing it up and who's the good guy and who's the bad guy and what's the penalty. But when you get down to the bottom line, Lynn St. James, woman racer, racers are just racers, aren't they? And when you get to the bottom line, they're all pretty much friends.
Well, that's right. And where we want to beat each other is on the racetrack. I mean, that's where it really counts. But I think that was one of the things that early on that really attracted me to racing was the camaraderie. It was a family sport. When I did this as a hobby, it was families out there helping and working together. And that's the spirit even up through the professional ranks. Everybody helps each other off the racetrack because where you want to be, the guy you might just help is on the racetrack. And that's where it counts. That's where it really, that's where the score's kept, is on the racetrack.
I want to ask you this question. Do you consider yourself a woman racer, or do you just consider yourself a racer? Where is the woman racer's role in modern-day racing, and how has it changed?
For me, I'm a race car driver, and I'm a woman. And it's, you know, that's just the way it is. And I think it's turning more into that in society and even in the racing ranks. I've been around it a long time, and I love it. And I just feel that the car doesn't know the difference, and the drivers really respect talent. They respect hard work. They respect results. And that's what I'm out there doing. And so that's the way I look at it. And I think that's the way more and more people are looking at it as we get more years go by, as we get smarter, as we get older.
High time indeed. All right, we're getting down to the finish here as we work the sun shining on the scoreboard, and I can't see how many laps are left. Somebody will help me with that. We're looking at 10 to go. 10 laps to go as the sun sets here at Pocono, and it's going to set on what could be a great shootout. Terry Labonte and Harry Gant ready to have at it. And oh, handsome Harry, hard luck Harry, as he was known through that long spell of a couple of years when he just couldn't win a race, perhaps ready to shed another piece of that reputation here this afternoon and go up there and take his shot. New team, new effort for Gant, and he's very, very optimistic that indeed they will be able to win races again. He was too long out of victory lane, but now as we come down, this should be 9 to go. He's got his hands full because Labonte indeed looks very, very strong. Checking it is 10 to go now. 10 from that cross of the start-finish line, and we'll see the checkered flag here at Pocono.
Boy, that's a long 10 laps for Terry Labonte. You know, he's listening to the car, feeling every little bump on the racetrack, trying to make sure everything's all right. He's held his own the last 2 laps. I've timed him with a hand stopwatch. It's about 6/10 of 1 second. The difference between Terry Labonte there and Harry Gant right there in second place is very close. They maintained it that time, and Dale Earnhardt right behind there in third place has maintained an even distance. So they're all doing the best they can. Maybe Harry Gant will be able to pull up on Terry Labonte. Maybe Dale Earnhardt will be able to pull up on Harry Gant. The next 9 laps or 9.5 laps to go, we're going to see a hell of a race, I think.
You know, Labonte seems to have the momentum coming off of those last couple pit stops. They really seem fired up and charged, but somehow Harry Gant is definitely quicker through turn 3, which is the most important turn. They seem to be a little quicker at different parts of the racetrack, but Harry definitely appears to be either a little hungrier or a little quicker through turn 3, and he's definitely charging to come after him.
We're counting down the laps here at Pocono, Pennsylvania, about to wrap it up. And before we leave you today, let's get this in now, because as we get to this exciting finish, we'll forget all about it. Terry Boutsen has been unofficially declared the winner of the Canadian Grand Prix. It is unofficial because of a protest from the Ferrari team. That's a report just in, and no other details. And in Detroit this afternoon, Emerson Fittipaldi, the Indy 500 champion, has won through the streets of Detroit, the first IndyCar race run there, replacing the Grand Prix cars. Great run for your old colleague, Lynn. Greg Pruitt second today. Mario was third. Mario Andretti, Teo Fabi fourth, and Rick Mears was the 5th place finisher.
Congratulations, Scotty. I'm so happy for him.
Rookie driver in IndyCar racing, great road racer, and there is your Detroit Grand Prix top 5 as we come down for to finish here at Pocono, Pennsylvania. An exciting afternoon of motorsports all around America, all around the world, and you're seeing the most exciting part of it right here at Pocono, Pennsylvania, where with 7 laps to go, Terry Labonte, the man who is perhaps bound elsewhere for next year, the man in the middle of all these questions about the Junior Johnson episode, continues to lead. A late race charge from Schrader. Kenny Schrader moves up in the race for 3rd and dives past Dale Earnhardt and handled him very effectively. That car looking strong, but will Earnhardt come back underneath him? We've seen it before. We see it again.
That's what I was just going to say. We've seen that before, but we've seen it before. They just have a total different line, and that's really handling it. We've got some brakes locking up there.
They
touched going into that turn.
They seem so stable. They were definitely smoked.
That's what you call swapping paint.
The battle into the final laps. That's paint indeed being swapped here at Pocono. All clean. Earnhardt and Schrader just going for the same piece of racetrack, stuck them wheel to wheel, and you saw the smoke that resulted. No harm done. They're liable to do it again right here. Earnhardt has the low line and will reassert himself and retake for the moment that 3rd spot from Kenny Schrader. Tremendous battle in the waning laps here at Pocono. Scoreboard now showing 193. We're about to wind down the clock at Pocono in front of a sellout crowd. It's been a spectacular afternoon, and we're going to have great racing all the way to the checkered flag. Earnhardt strong now, not giving Schrader another shot here. Labonte the leader, Gant is second, Earnhardt third, Labonte fourth, Sterling Marlin runs in fifth. Up to sixth comes Morgan Shepherd, Dale Jarrett is seventh, Neil Bonnet runs eighth. The ninth place car currently being shown out there as, and let me double check that, we're showing Larry Pearson as ninth at this point. Brett Bodine a lap down in 10th. We have 6 laps to go, and now as they come by start finish, 5 to go at Pocono. 5 laps remain. And the question is, can Harry Gant run down Terry Labonte? Will Dale Earnhardt be able to hold off Kenny Schrader and consolidate his point lead? The big issue here for Earnhardt is that he's in there and his championship rivals are not. They've gone by the wayside. Waltrip, victim of a heating problem in his engine. And for Rusty Wallace, the problem was a blown tire that shredded the front end of his automobile. But here's the story right here. Terry Labonte, Harry Gant. I guess in that situation, Gary, it's obviously better to be the guy running out front than the guy trying to catch up.
Boy, it's been very tough for Harry Gant. He gains a little, then he loses a little. Gains a little, loses a little. He's gone up to within, right here is about as close as he's been the last couple laps. He came within like a half a second, then he fell back to 0.8 of a second. He's really trying right now. You know he's getting the 5 to go signal from Harold Kinder, the flagman. See that hand out of the flag stand? That's 5 laps to go. Harry Gant, if he's got anything left, he's got to pull it out now.
Well, let's confirm that that is 5 laps to go. We've had some mixed information coming from scoring about the laps that remain, but Harold Kinder's the guy who decides that, and he clearly gave them the 5-lap signal that time by.
I just noticed that, you know, what Gary was saying was right. They were sort of swapping there, but he seems to pull on him now and has been able to at least hold that gain that he was able to make. So
a risk, Lynn, for Gant in becoming overly excited and overdriving the car and making a mistake here now as he tries to reel him in.
Yeah, it's possible, but not likely. I mean, he's, you know, they've been doing this a long time, and I don't think a mistake would happen, but he's definitely squeezing every little thing he can out of it. And, you know, a lot of times in NASCAR, sometimes it's an advantage to be in second if you can run real close because of the draft, but here they just seem to stay far enough away that the draft is not going to help them. I mean, the guy in the leader has really got the advantage in both first and in the third position.
Labonte with 4 to go has a half second on Gant. And then as they run back down through that field, you see the battle back there behind them, and that is the 3rd and 4th place battle between Earnhardt and Schrader. So it's two-car wars going on here, and Schrader, for the moment at least, unable to do anything with Earnhardt. They had their little tete-a-tete over the tunnel and swapped the spot back and forth. Earnhardt came out as the stronger man and has been able to consolidate that spot. And if he can hold that spot to the finish, or in any case here today, will consolidate his point lead that he gained last week. Consistency has been the key for the Earnhardt team as the field continue to do their hustle. And now a big interval change there. Speculation on that, Gary? Labonte really pulled away.
Harry Gant must have tried everything he could because he's down to 1.5 seconds. Somewhere between turn 1 and turn 2, he lost a lot of ground. I don't know what it is. He may have just really tried to go in extra hard into the turn. Right now with a hand stopwatch, Harry Gant is 2 seconds behind. So he lost over 1.5 seconds that lap.
You see him coming out of turn 3 on that last lap. Harry, it looks like his tires just have really, you know, because it was a 4-wheel drift. It wasn't a little bit of oversteer or a little push or oversteer, but it was a case that it was just like his outside tires, his right side tires just gave out on him. He just drifted right out.
Keep in mind that they did put on fresh tires. They put on sticker tires, as they're known. Those are the brand new tires that have not been run on the car. They still have the tire company sticker on them, and thus the name. And perhaps Labonte got the better of the sticker draw, came up with a better set of rubber. As we come down now, there will be just 2 laps remaining as this race draws to its conclusion at Pocono. And the Junior Johnson Ford team, that's right, Ford, not Chevy, after all these years, appears to be in the driver's seat here as we get ready for the checkered flag. There will be 2 to go this time by. And there is that signal to Labonte, who is beginning to stretch it out over Harry Gant. It looks like he's destined to win this one today.
You can see there, Terry Labonte has a 2-second lead over Harry Gant, who has a 2-second lead over Dale Earnhardt. And Dale Earnhardt is about a second ahead of Ken Schrader. So they're really trying everything they can, but Labonte is awful strong right here. He's really done a lot of smooth driving these last 15 laps.
He has the car's in a beautiful drift. I mean, it's just exactly what you want, you know. If he's not fighting it, it's just beautiful.
You can tell as he slides through the turn, just a little bit of a drift, like you said, Ben. That is a perfect picture.
Labonte looking for his first victory of this season with the Junior Johnson team, and 13 could be the lucky number today here at Pocono for Harry Gant. I don't think they'll be terribly disappointed with a second-place run. If indeed that is the way this will pan out in this the final lap. A new team, and anytime you can take a new team and put them up at the head of the field, that means you're a candidate to win races. Certainly Gant is a driver capable of winning. The white flag falls on the leader, Terry Labonte, in the Miller High Life 500 here at Pocono. He has now run 497 and a half of those 500 miles, and it should be a cakewalk home for the man who came out of Texas, became a stock car racer, moved to the Southeast, joined the Johnson team, actually won that Winston Cup championship back in 1984, and now they'll be going a new direction in 1990 as Winston Cup stock car racing continues to grow and boom all around the nation. Harry Gant, the old veteran, coming out of the Grand National ranks, trailing in second spot, but unable to mount a challenge here on their final pass down the backstretch and through the tunnel turn. There is Gant, interval steady, ran close, could not find the leader, and as now Terry Labonte works his way down through the final corner. It is all his to win, and a sellout crowd is on its feet. The Ford fans glory, the Junior Johnson fans cheer. Terry Labonte has won the Miller High Life 500 here at Pocono, Pennsylvania, surviving the attrition, driving a magnificent race, coming from 23rd starting spot. That is the farthest back that anyone has ever come to win the race. We have a big smoke cloud in turn 3 on the final lap. A spin on the final lap for Ricky Rudd, last week's winner. Problems all day, frequent pit stops, and now a spin just as he was coming for the checkered flag. He was a couple of laps down at least, and as a result, that may not have that much impact on his final standing. He was able to save the car, keep it out of the concrete, and will bring it past the checkered flag as we end this 500-miler with a cloud of smoke for Rudd and a great celebration in the Junior Johnson camp for Terry Labonte, who has come home the winner here this afternoon. Dale Earnhardt drives up alongside, gives him a wave. Earnhardt will take third from Schrader here this afternoon. Kenny Schrader, the fourth-place finisher, and Harry Gant, the frustrated runner-up. And we'd have to check that record book pretty carefully. I'm not sure our calculator goes high enough to add up the number of second-place finishes that Harry Gant has recorded during the course of his career. But for Labonte, it is a great day today. Interesting that a team around which there has been so much speculation should pull together and win this race, Gary.
Boy, that was a heck of a run for Labonte, coming from 23rd position, going all the way to the front and really dominating. You know, Rusty Wallace dominated, Darrell Waltrip dominated, but Labonte kind of sat in the back. And at the very end, when Harry Gant tried his challenge and Dale Earnhardt tried his challenge, Labonte won this race, racing those guys. So he really earned it.
And so it is Labonte who goes to victory lane here at Pocono on this very sunny Sunday afternoon, Father's Day. For Terry Labonte, son of a racer, a young man who definitely has found his niche in stock car racing and is now ready to accept the accolades of victory here in the 13th race of the 1989 Winston Cup Stock Car Championship season. A lot of talk about the switch of Junior Johnson to the Ford team for 1989. A lot of people said, oh no, that can never ever happen. But indeed it did happen, and now they've made the Ford a winner. The furthest back that anyone had ever started to win this race was 16th, and that was by Dale Earnhardt back in 1987. Actually, that's the furthest back anyone has ever started at this racetrack, and that was in the second race at Pocono back in 87. Earnhardt came from 16th. Today, Labonte has rewritten that paragraph of the record book from 23rd to victory lane at Pocono, Pennsylvania. A great day indeed for Terry Labonte. And now somewhere in the middle of that crowd, I think we'll find our Dick Berggren. Let's have a winner interview with Terry Labonte and our man Dick. There's Dick.
Hey, he's on his way up to victory lane. Terry Labonte from 23rd to 1st. What a difference. What did you guys do to make up so much?
Well, I think I really screwed up qualifying. That's where the problem was. The car was fast in practice. I told him before we qualified, it's the best car I've ever had at this place. And, you know, for some reason, we just didn't qualify good, but the car was awful good.
Your year has been such a struggle, all sorts of stories and rumors about what's going on. How much have you overcome in order to wind up here on victory lane?
Well, it's been awful tough. You know, of course, all the rumors that are going on, it hadn't made things any easier for any of the guys on the team. And we just kind of all, we know what to do. We all work together, and we try to win some races and trying to get back in the points race. So it's just a real credit to Tim Brewer and all the guys that work on Junior's team. You know, that in the middle of you know, some controversy, everybody rises to the occasion. So it's a great victory for the whole team.
toward the end of the race, you were running so well. It just seemed as if you were dancing the car.
Well, the car was working awful good. The car was just a little bit tight at the end of the race there, and I was watching Harry in the mirror, and his car was a little loose. And I figured my car would get a little bit better and his would get worse, and that's the way it worked out.
Any substance at all to the rumors, Terry?
No, I tell you, it's a great team I'm with, and I'd just like to thank all the guys here on the Budweiser team for doing a super job today.
Did they talk you through the last few laps? Were they talking to you on the radio, telling you what to do?
We didn't say a word.
What kinds of things were they telling you?
We didn't say nothing.
Just quiet at the very end.
It was just quiet, yeah.
There's a lady behind you, I think, that would like to say hello. That's his wife. She gets the first kiss. Terry? There it is.
His workmanlike approach to racing, I think, is the thing that has always impressed me most about Terry Labonte. He's not the flashiest guy out there. He's always a good interview, but he's not the guy who's always in the middle of the controversy, not the guy who's in the shoving matches that we talked about earlier. But if you're looking for a guy to go out there week in, week out and get the job done, Terry Labonte's a pretty good pick, and I think he showed that very nicely here today. We're going to review the race summary here today, some of the statistical data that will go into the record book surrounding this Pocono event this afternoon. The Miller High Life 500 won by Terry Labonte, who led just 18 of 200 laps. But if you're only going to lead 18, lead them at the end of the race. The average speed 131.3, a result of the incident in turn 1 in which Bodine hit the wall hard and they had to effect repairs on the wall. That was one of 6 cautions that lasted just 23 laps, and that's not bad considering the work that they had to do. 13 leaders, 24 lead changes in the race, 9 cars on the lead lap, and of 38 cars that started, 29 finished, so the attrition in the end was not terribly dramatic, but it did take out a couple of significant contenders in the championship standings. We're going to take a look at the top 15 in the results. Labonte winning over Gant, Earnhardt and Schrader battling to the flag for 3rd and 4th, and Morgan Shepherd coming home 5th. Again, another workmanlike drive here today. Sterling Marlin held on for 6th. Jarrett emerged as a 7th place finisher. Jarrett, Bonnet, Pearson, and Brett Bodine all coming on strong after that last yellow. Lake Speed wasn't able to maintain his early speed and ended up 11th over Phil Parsons, Bobby Hillen, Mike Waltrip, who was 2nd here a year ago, and Mark Martin struggled today. They thought they had it right, but lo and behold, the troubles that they encountered early left them in 15th spot. I think we should make clear what those rumors are about Terry Labonte. The allusion has been made to what's going on there, and let's reset that for you. It began a couple of months ago, I guess, Gary, the scuttlebutt through the garage that Rusty Wallace would race elsewhere in 1990. His contract with the Kodiak team ending at the end of the 1989 season, and Rusty ultimately, perhaps a month ago, admitting, well, yeah, I'm talking to people, I'm shopping myself around. But in the middle of all that, the story emerged that he would go to Junior Johnson. And then the automatic question is, what happens to Terry Labonte, whose contract is also up? Any light you can shed on that? One story I heard that I thought was kind of interesting is that Junior Johnson might actually make an effort to perpetuate those rumors, that he, in fact, got Jeff Bodine over between the trucks at a race or two back and had a little visit. Would Junior do something like that?
Oh, it's so difficult. This is, you know, we call it the silly season. It's late in the year when everybody starts trying to figure out who's going to drive what car, but the silly season has started earlier and earlier every year. Now it's in June and we're into the silly season, and we really won't know the answer to any of that until we get down to Daytona for the Daytona 500 and we look on the roof of all these cars and see whose name's on there.
Lynn St. James, your reactions to all this. Final comment.
We had the best seat in the house. First I was in Rusty Wallace's car, then I was in Kenny Schrader's car, and then I was in Labonte's car at the end. I mean, it's like we had the best seat in the house. It was fantastic. It was a great race.
We've seen a spectacular show here this afternoon, and that show ultimately has fallen to the old veteran Junior Johnson and his workmanlike driver Terry Labonte. A wonderful afternoon for the sellout crowd at Pocono. For the first time in history, we have filled this racetrack to capacity, and the race that they saw ended with Terry Labonte out front of Harry Gant. A wonderful show here, and we certainly hope that you've enjoyed it here on SET Uninterrupted by Commercials. For Lynn St. James, Gary Nelson, for Pat Patterson and Dick Berggren, I'm Dave Despain. So long from Pocono. The executive producer of the Miller 5